Welcome to the Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I am one of your co-hosts, Derek Anderson, and I am joined today by Tamika Jones, Scott Drebit, and Bryan Christopher. We are here to do a 2010s horror retrospectives episode. I know you may be thinking, Derek's at the helm. Is this going to be a Disney Channel original movie podcast episode? I can assure you I do have my orders, and we are going to do not only 1, but 2 years for our horror retrospective series. And we are going back in time, not that far, just to 2017 and 2018. Jonathan is not with us on this episode, but he left the keys to the car, and I'm going to see if I can take it for a little joyride along with my friends as we go back into the near future. Now, before we start with the horror, which there was a lot of the last 2 years in the new golden age of horror, I'm going to, as Jonathan usually does, look at some of the non-horror moments of 2017, including some of the new words that were added to the dictionary. And
1 second, Derek, if I might, if I can just go back for a second. Back to the near future?
It's kind of like Back to the Future 4 in spirit.
But we're going just back to the past, aren't we?
Well, when you put it that way, it's like a 180 on a 180. I mean, you just got to think about it. I'm trying to spin my wheels here figuratively and get out of this.
No, you're doing great. I thought I needed to address that before we carry on.
So, guys, I'm going to go. Have a good night. It was great talking to everybody, but yeah, I'm out.
So right. The Derek Anderson experience is just not your thing. But we thank you for joining us. But maybe this will help you stick around. We have some fun new words in 2017, such as yas.
Near future?
Yes. Near future, new past, potato. It really, it's all the same, right? Time is just relative.
Time is a flat circle.
So we have yas as a new word in 2017. We have squad goals added to the dictionary. Weak sauce. Word salad, which you can put your weak sauce on, I'm assuming. And froyo. So there's some new...
Froyo?
Froyo.
How did Froyo take that long to get
good
there?
Question. That is a good question. It's like some of these words, it seems it takes 30 years to make it in, and then other words get added the year they are, imagined. So I don't really know how that works.
Well, at first I thought you said broyo, and I thought, I haven't even heard that one yet.
Well, when you have a bromance with somebody, your first date is to go out for a broyo.
Okay.
Oh, good. That's good.
And if you play your cards right, you get some of that weak sauce.
Oh, God.
So this just turned into an explicit episode on our iTunes page.
No, that's just a topping for the broyo. It's fine.
Oh,
okay. Well, if we're going to go for the full E, let's do it. So then, do you also toss a word salad?
Oh, my God.
And as we move on to other things that happened in 2017, we had pop culture moments of the year, including Salt Bae, the gentleman who showed us a new way to add salt to delectable dishes. Does everyone remember the Salt Bae?
Yeah.
That was
I don't.
No, what? I don't remember that at all.
A guy put salt on his food?
That guy had like the little flourish, like twisting his fingers together. Yes.
Yeah, a little sprinkle.
That one passed me by.
Well,
Scott, I think you'd know it if you saw it. I just never knew it as the Salt Bae.
Okay.
Actually, I have a Thanos T-shirt of him. Like, instead of salt, he has the Infinity Stones that he's sprinkling onto the universe, I suppose. So that happened. So if you're looking for a gift idea, we also had, on a more serious note, we had the Me Too movement that really was a huge thing in 2017, of course, gathered a lot of momentum that year. We had the Oscars mix-up with Moonlight and La La Land. So I'm surprised we don't have a movie on that yet. And we had the Women's March on the White House. So there was a lot of stuff happening, a lot of political and social things in the works. And then we also had Salt Bae. So take your pick.
What a year.
But I think we will switch it back. This is a horror podcast. If you're listening, I'm assuming that's what you're expecting us to talk about. So we usually do kind of round robin on these. Everyone gets 2 movies. And let's start off with Tamika. What is your first pick from 2017? Your one of your favorite horror movies?
It was a tough call for me because I didn't realize how many of how many really good horror films came out in 2017 that I absolutely loved. And so I had to kind of decide. It was kind of like deciding like a favorite kid or something, even though I don't have kids, but it felt like that emotionally. So I ended up picking Happy Death Day, which I completely forgot. For some reason, I thought the Happy Death Day came out in 2018, but then no, because Happy Death Day to You came out in 2018. So yeah, I got all jumbled up. But Christopher Landon's Happy Death Day was just so much fun, and I know that it gets kind of compared to Groundhog Day because I know you're reliving the same day over and over. But I thought it was, I don't know, so much more than that. I think it was kind of taking the piss out of stuff like that, but at the same time creating its own story and like its own lore. And I thought it was really funny, and it was PG-13. And normally I don't really care for PG-13 horror. But that's not going to be true for long because my pick for 2018 is glorious and it's PG-13. So, but yeah, Happy Death Day was definitely a standout for me in 2017. And I remember even people, I remember hearing people not hearing, but seeing people on Twitter talk about that, Into Club by 50 Cent, because they played that so much during a lot of the trailers. And I even saw younger people, revisiting that song. And I'm like, wow, how old am I that there are people young enough that they've never heard Into Club.
It feels terrible, doesn't it? Isn't that the worst feeling in the world?
It hurts, Scotty. It hurts.
It does. Oh,
Scott says with glee.
Yeah, what the heck, man?
Hey, welcome to the club. Okay.
Do we get a 5 timers jacket?
Oh my God.
That is a great pick, though. And you know what I think? What was really disarming about it was because we knew going in basically what the story was, the Groundhog Day scenario. But when it unfolds, as you said, it does its own thing at the same time, and it finds a lot of creativity within horror by doing it that way. There's so many, it's hilarious when she gets killed over and over again because it gives the filmmakers, so much leeway to do a whole spread of different takes on it, and it was very well written and directed, acted. I think it caught a lot of people off guard because they were expecting something, I think, a lot paler of an imitation of Groundhog Day than what it was, which was, doing, as you said, doing its own thing.
Yeah, this is a great pick. It's actually one I didn't see until this year. It just popped up on the HBO streaming, and after everybody kind of talking about it, I was like, I finally got to give this a try, and I'm very, very glad I did. It was funny. It was very good at working within PG-13, but kind of giving you just enough of a glimpse of what was going on to actually be kind of brutal. And it also kind of made sense too, because you can't really see the after effects of what's happening to her if you're following her into the reset. So it all kind of makes sense. It wasn't anything where you're kind of wishing you were seeing more. And it's also a movie that I don't think really was about the gore. Scott, I know one of the minor quibbles you had about the Final Girls was that with the type of movie that was, that there should have been gore, and I can definitely see that argument. I definitely don't think that was missing from this one, because I don't think that was really the point of this one.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it was really more about the story, Jessica Roth's character, and she's amazing in it. She's funny. She's great at playing both bratty and endearing, and usually a combination of the two. So yeah, I love this one. It was one I was very glad I got caught up with this year.
Yeah, this one made me a fan of Christopher Landon, because I'd seen Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, and I really loved that movie. And then he did Paranormal Activity 3, the marked ones, which was also Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, which is kind of like the spin-off. And I enjoyed that as well. But then this just solidified my kind of eternal fandom for his work, because I think it perfectly captured horror and humor. And like you said, Jessica Roth's performance is really good, especially because in the first one, it's kind of like she's from Mean Girls, and then we get to see her transform through the movie. And then we get to continue to see that in the sequel, which, came out, actually, believe it or not, that came out this year, which is surprising because it feels like it came out last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this was a lot of fun, though. And I think it was such an original idea, too. And I just think we've started to see so much more of that towards the end of the decade. These bold voices really getting to flex their muscles. And then Christopher Landon's next project is like a body swapping horror comedy with Vince Vaughn switching bodies with like a teenage girl. And I think he's a serial killer. So I'm curious to see how that plays out too. So we shall stay tuned, but great pick. That was a lot of fun. Let's see if we can keep the great picks going. Let's go to Bryan. What do you have as your first pick, Bryan?
All right. Interesting to hear that Yas was officially made a word in the dictionary, considering my pick, which is tragedy girls. This was actually my very first film festival viewing. I saw this at my first trip to Salem Horror Fest. And it's funny because it was actually one that was just more of a warm up for me for what I was really there for, if you can believe it. Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, was kind of my main event for that weekend.
Lincoln.
Money well spent.
Yes,
Team
sir.
Tina.
But this movie absolutely blew me away. I did not see it coming in terms of how much I was going to like it. I'd only heard little bits about it beforehand. And it was one of those ones where, I've heard of that, I forget what the term for it is, but kind of like that festival glow that people will give certain movies. And maybe, it kind of heightens their enjoyment just because of the situation they're seeing it in. But then when it did get released on Blu-ray, I bought it right away. And when I watched it, I loved it just as much as the first time I saw it. It's got that perfect blend of like belly laugh humor, but also it's really dark. And it's a way that it's dark in a way that they dare the audience to cheer for people who are just absolutely awful human beings. And the funny thing for me is that, a lot of people talk about the discussion about social media and kind of, what that, the generation gap and kind of what that does in terms of like our collective sociopath tendencies. But for me, this was all about the relationship between Alexandra Shipp and Brianna Hildebrand's characters. And it was just a lot of fun to watch them interact with one another, how that relationship kind of got frayed as the movie went along, and then the quote unquote happy ending of them winding up together at the expense of their entire senior class. So yeah, I absolutely love this movie. This is one of my favorite of the 2000s so far.
Well, that was one I was going to pick, and I got swatted away by Derek. He said, nope, someone had that. Now, I could have sworn it was going to be Tamika who was going to pick that, but I'll just yell at Bryan instead because I'd rather do that. But no, that's a terrific pick. And, I think what it would really pair well with is Heathers.
Yes, absolutely.
Be a great double bill with Heathers because it has, as you said, Bryan, it has that humor in there, but it has such a nihilistic streak a mile wide running through it, that you can't help but appreciate how well they balance that tone. And that's really tricky to do. And so, yeah, that's one. That's a movie that I think I will find myself revisiting again and again as the years go by. And what it says about social media, it's one of the best movies, especially in horror, that's addressed it so far.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm curious. I want to ask Scott a question, but I'm nervous because I don't want to derail the conversation.
Ooh, hey, I do it all the time. So
I love that. You're like, derail. Yes. Okay. Why did you think that I was going to pick this movie? I'm just curious.
I thought when it came out, I thought I had heard you saying you loved it.
I do love this movie.
That's why. Yours
okay,
was the first name that popped in my head. I'm like, Tamika took it, because I remember you raving about it when it came out.
It's because it's a girly movie and Scott is a raging sexist. That's why he thought you were the one.
Well, that's the other reason, obviously.
And Scott, I didn't want to tell you because I wanted this reaction.
Perfect. No, I remember you. I remember you really digging it when it came out. So yours was the first name that popped in my head.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. I did. I love this movie.
Yeah.
And I found out that it's on Prime, so I'm probably going to watch that later. I'm going to rewatch it later. But no, I love that this movie got chosen by someone because it also, okay, I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, because I certainly don't think that I'm certainly not reveling in bad behavior, but I will say it was really nice to see like girls/women behaving badly, because I think I see a lot of women don't blah blah blah, and kind of putting us on these pedestals as if we're not human. And I like these movies that kind of unpack, our bad behavior, and obviously this is beyond bad because they are just so reprehensible, but but still, there's a story there too, and that should be shared as well. And we can unpack how social media and how society affects girls and women too. It's we're not perfect. We do really awful things, and it's just really nice. And I like the suggestion to pair it with Heathers, because I love that movie. And it's so it's so mean as well, kind of. But in a way,
they're great at. I think both movies are great at dealing with relationships, right? Like in Tragedy Girls, there's a lot of great things about it, including, the kills, etc. But the relationship between the two of them is the most interesting thing in the movie. That's the meat of the movie, which is great.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of like Heathers with social media. Like if Heathers had been made in this decade. So I think that is one of the most endearing qualities of it. But like you said, the friendship is really what it all revolves around. And that's, I think, why it will probably be, I guess you could call it a cult classic. If I know the horror community received it really well, but I just see it being that 10, 15 years from now, even more popular. So that would be fun to see. We'll have to see how some of the social media aspects, if that'll be a time capsule or if that'll be super relevant. But either way, the friendship will always be relevant. So excellent pick, Bryan. And Scott, since he can't pick Tragedy Girls, what is going to be your first pick? Not to remind you.
Yes, I'm going to go with, while not exactly horror, it's certainly very, very horror adjacent and made by someone who revels in horror, and that's Joe Lynch's Mayhem.
Nice.
Yeah, I absolutely adore this movie. It is, for anyone who hasn't seen it, if you've ever worked in an office or you work in an office, imagine getting the chance without consequence to rebel against every authority figure without consequences. I call it Lord of the Files, which I think is a good alternative title. It's just so much damn fun and over the top violent. And again, it has a lot to say, about office relationships and how that particular power pyramid is set up. Those politics are always fascinating, and God, Mayhem is just a blast.
I think the thing I love the most about Mayhem is that it kind of marks the post Walking Dead evolution of Stephen Yeun.
Yep.
He played Glenn for many years, and you always have to worry a little bit about like when someone really gets their breakout from one major role like that just explodes, are they going to be able to find a life after that? And this showed that Stephen Yeun was going to do that by choosing some really off the wall stuff to do. There's this, he was in Sorry to Bother You, which isn't quite horror, but I think there's some kind of horrific elements in there. Yeah. He's in a movie called, was it Burning, I believe, that I'm told is very, very good. So it sounds like he's willing to wait and just find roles that best suit him and that are going to be really interesting. And this kind of really kicked that off because it is a very interesting movie. It is, like you said, Scott, a lot of fun. And it's just one of those ones where like, you don't need to think about it too hard. You just kind of sit back, relax, and enjoy the roller coaster ride. So yeah, I love this one.
And he's still caked in blood, so it's like a transitional role, it doesn't stand out too far apart from The Walking Dead on the old CV there. And I can't forget, Samara Weaving. And this was another like great awakening of a superstar being born. My God, she's terrific in this. They both are. The whole cast is great. It's a very cathartic, like I said, it's a very cathartic movie. If you've ever had a job where you're frustrated and you want to take out said frustrations, but you would end up in jail. Well, the scenario of this movie kind of allows that to take place without the consequences. And what a treat. Joe Lynch is just a high-powered filmmaker that his movies are so high energy that they're kind of in a class of their own.
And it's also interesting too because with a lot of these kinds of movies where there's like an infection involved, it's usually something where there's like maybe one or two people who are like the last few to not be infected, and the crux of it is like how are we gonna stay uninfected. But right from go, like that Stephen Yeun and Samara Weaving, they've both got it, and that's half the fun is the fact that they also had this infection.
Yeah, it's kind of like Office Space if it had been super violent, like if they had taken their aggression out on a coworker instead of the printer. It like you said, Scott, it is that kind of daydream aspect of it, where in the corporate environment where you just have all this pent up frustration. And it's interesting because the Belko Experiment was also released this year as well. So that's another one. This one did a similar premise that I think this one did it a lot better than the Belko Experiment. I would say, and I think it's probably been remembered a little bit more. I mean, both films had great casts, but this one, I think, definitely, especially with Samara's kind of breakout performance, and like you said, Stephen Yeun coming off of The Walking Dead, and this was a big Shudder release. I think it was one of their first like really big movie releases where it was like a exclusive streaming premiere, and it felt kind of like an event when it was released. So I think it was pretty big for them as well in terms of their history. So that is a really good pick. I'm glad you picked that. And Tamika, are you a big fan of Mayhem?
Yes, it's funny that you brought up Office Space because I love that movie and I quote it so much.
It's
but
kind of
I
like
was
going
to say that Mayhem. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying Office Space is kind of like a horror movie.
Yeah, it can definitely be. I agree with that.
Well, yeah. Think
I was going to
if they
say.
had. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
No. I was speaking of Office Space. I was just going to say that if they hadn't given him back his stapler, and he said he was going to burn the whole building down. Well, there you go.
Well, listen. Oh, now I want to watch Office Space. Damn it. No, but I was going to say that Mayhem reminds me of like a much more violent version of that song, Take This Job and Shove It, which is also on the soundtrack. Oh, it's so good though.
Which was also a movie not nearly as violent as this one.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. But yeah, I was trying to think when Belko Experiment came out, because they are very similar. I wonder what was going on in 2017 that we felt the need to make movies about like office aggression, like office aggressions.
I think it's sometimes it just lines up that way. It's not always chasing a trend. I don't think there was any trend. I think it's just two different entities had a similar idea, and they both happened to come out around the same time. That's what I think happened anyway.
Yeah, it's always you wonder if it's a coincidence or did someone. It's one of those weird things. Like maybe that's just the trend in the marketplace. But yeah, it is an interesting interesting trend.
There was no Asylum knockoff, so I'm going to assume it was just a coincidence.
Well, speaking of Asylum, my first pick for 2017 is actually not Asylum, or not an Asylum release, but it is a little indie movie. You might have heard of it. And it does kind of have to do with Office Space, because you could interpret it as IT, otherwise known as It. Okay, maybe not as indie as I initially expected. But
Never
we
heard
had
of
to travel a long way to get to that.
Jeez.
But you'll float too, dear listeners. This I couldn't resist choosing It. It definitely seemed like one of the bigger event movies of 2017, and maybe the most apprehensive release, just because so many people cherish the Stephen King book so much, and we're wondering, oh gosh, are they going to mess this up? What's it going to be like? But I think it really not only met expectations, but exceeded them. And the Losers Club was just so perfectly cast, and that the friendships seem so real. And I thought everything about it was great. I think Bill Skarsgård kind of stole the show. And I think that was another thing we weren't sure of, is what is that going to be like? Because I know there had been a lot of people that auditioned for that. There had been someone else attached, like back when Cary Fukunaga was directing it. So Bill he had been in some things at that point, but this was such a breakout role for him. And yeah, I think it warmed a lot of hearts, and it certainly made a lot of bucks at the box office that year. And I think all of us were in agreement. I remember we did a Corpse Club episode on this. I think we all were like head over heels for it, if I remember correctly.
I know I was, definitely. That was one of the best movies, I thought, horror movies that came out that year, so long ago, in the near future.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think we've already said so much about it, but it's kind of certainly the elephant in the room when it comes to horror for that year. It was just a massive runaway success. And, what does that come down to? I mean, Stephen King's name alone doesn't guarantee box office. So I just think the scope of the picture was so big that it captured people's attention beyond horror. And it had a lot of good, solid scares in it, great atmosphere, great performances. I just think the horror movies for me that succeed are the ones that manage to tell a great story or tell a story greatly, right? And it is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I'll admit that I came to this one late. I didn't have a lot of interest. I had never read the book. I enjoyed the miniseries well enough, mainly because of Tim Curry, but it wasn't anything I was really chomping at the bit to see. And in fact, didn't see it during the first run. But I just happened to one day, I was looking for, not too far away, there's a second run movie theater, and just decided on a lark to go and check it out. And found myself absolutely in love with it within the first 15 minutes. It's one of those movies that is it's horror with a capital R, capital R. Okay.
We got a new soundbite.
How do you spell horror? Capital H. Well, there's a lot of R's, so
there is
horror.
It's the Scooby-Doo version.
Yes. Ruh-roh. But it's one of those movies where it's just they kind of throw everything against the wall to see what sticks in terms of different horror elements, and it works, and they all seem to stick because that's kind of what the movie's about. It's this thing that's going after your fears and feeds off of them, so that comes in a bunch of different forms. So it's kind of one of those things that's like a smorgasbord that has a little bit of something for everybody. You hate clowns, it's obviously got a clown. You hate the dark, it's got plenty of the dark. You hate, creatures, it's got different creatures. So it's just one of those things where it's just nothing in it is groundbreaking necessarily. It's not exploring new territory, but it's all what it does do is done so well that you can't help but to be won over by it.
Yeah. And it kind of feels like the Star Wars of the Stephen King universe, where there's so many adaptations. We're seen to be living in the second, third, maybe fourth golden age of Stephen King adaptations, but it seems to be right up there with The Shining and Carrie as these big kind of Stephen King properties that are a little, maybe even more revered than others, but I think they did it justice. What do you think, Tamika? Were you head over heels for it? Did you did you follow Pennywise into the sewer like Georgie?
I love the movie, but no, I did not follow Pennywise into the sewer.
Smart move.
Smarter than George.
Yeah, right? Am I right?
Smart with a capital T.
A capital R.
I think the time machine is
the joke.
having some effects on us.
No, you made me lose my train of thought. No. I'm back. I got it back. No, I really enjoyed the miniseries when I was a kid. It really freaked me out because I do definitely have a thing about clowns. Even the ones that are kind of happy looking, they freak me out too. Like Ronald McDonald, always really creep me out. Mm-hmm. So that worked for me. But I wasn't apprehensive about this remake because I don't know, I was just interested. The cast, a lot of them were from Stranger Things or I just didn't know them at all. So I just thought, okay, let's see what this could be. And it's just so good. And I think it really captures the spirit of Stephen King and I guess what he's the themes, the moral. I think because not all Stephen King adaptations really nail that, well, in my opinion. And I loved the Bill Skarsgård version of Pennywise. He was just creepy in his own way. He had that kind of old timey vibe to him. I don't know. That's just I was thoroughly disturbed by. And then of course there is that weird. Do you guys remember the clown epidemic? I feel silly even calling it that. But when people were dressing up like clowns and they're just scaring people.
Yeah,
did that happen around this time?
That was around that time because it was happening. There were sightings.
Okay, so Bryan and I would be out of this question, but I'll pose this to Derek and Tamika. Would you guys ever date a clown? Let's say Tamika, you meet this guy at a regular place, whatever, you go out for coffee, He seems like a great guy. And then when you ask him what he does for a living, he says, "I'm a clown."
No. I can't.
Is that a see you later?
It has to be a see you later. It has to be, because like, I don't even know. I don't know. I just couldn't. There's no way. Like when I was a kid, my mom threw me a surprise birthday party, and she didn't tell me that she was going to dress up like a clown. And so she came out of the bathroom, jumped out at me, and was like, "Surprise, happy birthday." And I lost my mind.
So
okay.
That's
a no from Tamika. What about you, Derek?
Well, knowing my luck, I'm sure my date would just like transform into a Pennywise creation. So, I mean,
so that's a yes.
I don't know. I guess I would have to. I'd be curious to see, like, okay, are they like, what kind of a clown? Where are they? Where is she like working? Like, is this, birthday parties, or is this staying outside people's windows at 2 a.m? I'd want to know more. I guess it wouldn't be an immediate deal breaker, but
Derek is clown curious.
I'm actually a little offended, Scott. Why can I not answer this question?
Because you have a partner.
And did you ask me if my partner is a clown?
Ooh, got you there.
Touche. I wasn't answering it.
She's not. She's terrified of clowns.
Well, with that build up, and then you just let us down like that.
I just, once again, pointing out that Scott is making assumptions that I don't think he should be making.
We will take it into consideration.
Just because he's right really. Doesn't mean he shouldn't be doing it.
I feel like this is a technical difficulties moment. Like, the little screen comes up.
No.
Yeah, usually this is more of an off-air conversation, but I think our listeners will appreciate this.
Yeah,
Jonathan's
totally.
not here. We can.
Derek, you have to put that in your Twitter bio now. Clown curious.
Okay. Maybe we'll see what kind of DMs I get. So maybe I'll do that. And
you're going to be getting some pretty interesting ones for me, sir.
All right. Some balloon animal creations.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I'm going to be scared to go online after this. So before we start our next round of picks, let's go back to pop culture type moments from 2017, shall we? I have here in front of me some of the popular songs that were on the Billboard Hot 100 in 2017. Gosh. So just to see if any pop out at you, we have Shape of You by Ed Sheeran.
No.
We have Humble by Kendrick Lamar.
No.
That's What I Like, Bruno Mars.
That's
anything
Bruno Mars I'm on board with.
Oh, here's one that everyone will know. Despacito, Luis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee featuring Justin Bieber. Yeah. I believe that might have the most views on YouTube, or pretty close to it.
I only recognized like 3 of the words you used in that sentence.
What?
Should I YouTube
all of these? It's so good so far. So good.
Ooh, can't leave T Swift out. We have Look What You Made Me Do.
Oh, that one's not bad.
Wow.
And
if that's the one I'm thinking of.
Rockstar by Post Malone featuring 21 Savage. So we had a little bit of everything.
I don't know her either.
I don't know her either.
And Starboy by The Weeknd featuring Daft Punk. So Daft Punk making an appearance again.
I like Daft Punk.
Nice.
So definitely some tunes there. No Loverboy Scott, but maybe in 2018 we'll have a comeback.
No. No, we won't.
And a look, too, at some of the non-horror movies that were big in 2017. It was actually a really big year for cinema. Maybe that's why they had the mix-up at the Oscars. I'm not sure. But we had Thor Ragnarok.
That's a gooder.
Taika Waititi directing that one. We had Dunkirk, Wonder Woman, Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
I'm curious. That one seems to have divided a lot of people. I'm 100% for it. What's the group's consensus on it?
I think that The Last Jedi is one of the very best Star Wars movies, and I think it's going to be The Empire Strikes Back of this trilogy.
Thank you, sir. You are correct. Any other answer is
I'm
wrong.
kind of divided.
Yeah?
This is wrong. I'm a little divided, I think. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I think that's because I'm not like the most like well versed on like the Star Wars mythology. But I think I kind of see where people are like the critiques are coming from. They feel like everything that they've been kind of primed to feel or to like look forward to, they just feel like it just kind of didn't happen. Like, oh, well, that's your fault. Like you wanted to know who Rey's mom was? Well, that's all you. It's like that came from somewhere. Like they had to have seen that, picked up on that from something, you know? And I get why they felt slighted, even though I didn't feel slighted, but I do understand that critique, if that makes sense.
I think it does. I mean, I'm the same way. I really enjoyed it. I had a blast. I think it was a total fun time at the theater, and I didn't have any issues like with it after watching it. But I do understand. Like, I know Rian Johnson definitely went there as far as, you know, turning what you would expect against you almost. But to me, I kind of like that because it mixes things up and it makes for a different viewing experience, especially because The Force Awakens was so similar to A New Hope that it was kind of refreshing to see something go against the grain. I know it probably didn't rub people quite the right way in some respects, but I think it was pretty epic, and I need to rewatch it, I think, to like fully encapsulate my feelings on it. But overall, definitely enjoyed it and had a great time watching it in the theaters. So, but yeah, we had our own Star Wars on our own Star Twitter wars for a few months after that movie came out.
That's still going on.
Yeah, I think, actually you're right. It's being rekindled right now.
Of course.
And we also had Logan come out that year.
Awesome.
That was great.
We had Baby Driver. Blade
I wasn't
Runner.
crazy. I love Edgar Wright, but I don't know. There was something about Baby Driver that I just wasn't captivated by it. I mean, technically it's fantastic, but I don't know. I'll have to give it another chance. I'm open to doing that, but I don't know about that one.
Not your playlist, right?
Not on my playlist at the moment. No.
We had Blade Runner 2049. We had Coco.
Oh. Can I tell you how many times I've seen Coco in a household with a 2.5-year-old?
Oh my goodness.
I can't
Can you count them on two hands or more than that?
Keep going.
Oh my. So I got to start using feet too then.
Yes, and every appendage you have, and then some.
Boy, that's kind of a sad movie too, but
no,
I suppose
it's
more
sad.
for the mute. I guess it's a celebration of life.
I mean, I cry every time when, he sings the song at the end and she remembers the song.
I remember
every
me.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember me.
Sorry, I'm having a Coco moment. Sorry.
Get some
That's
hot
all
cocoa.
I got.
Listen to Scott sing Coco.
I've heard the song a million times. I can remember the name of it.
Spider-Man Homecoming was released that year.
Scooter.
John Wick Chapter 2.
Yeah.
Okja.
John.
War for the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And we cannot forget The Snowman.
Oh, God.
The
I don't
Snowman?
know. I haven't seen it from what I've heard. I think you should forget it.
Oh, it's not good at all. It's really bad.
But of course, I felt the need to include it in our non-horror 2017 list.
And that's not a hot take. It is flaming garbage. It's really, really bad.
But then it's the kind of, when you say that, it kind of makes you want to watch it though, right?
Hey, and it's short. It's like It's only like no more than 90 minutes or something. I would love to have a discussion with people about the Snowman.
Well, perhaps we can revisit if this inspires people to watch. But in the meantime, let's hop back into our 2017 horror time machine. And Tamika, I believe it's your turn for your second pick.
Now, I know that some people did not care for this movie, but I stand her because I thought she was good.
Ooh, disclaimer. I love it. Let's go.
The disclaimer. Here we go. Darren Aronofsky's Mother, come on down.
Oh.
No. Listen. No, see, listen. Okay. So the house is planet Earth, right? And then Mother is Mother Nature. And then Javier Bardem, I guess, is God. And then all the rude people who like come into the house are like us, right? I mean, like, disrespect the house, you know, Mother Earth, we like pollute her and stuff. It's so good. Okay. So Scott, why don't you like it?
Here's the thing. I was intrigued by the first half of it.
Okay.
Because you weren't sure exactly yet what was going on. And it was still it had an uneasy feeling to it and an anxious feeling to it. And I was into it. And then when it started to play its hand in the second half, it was like it just hammered home the same point over and over and over again, and I kind of lost interest in it by the end. Not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that the first half worked a lot better than the second half, and I know a lot of people feel the reverse, but I like the build up better than where it actually went.
I never did see this one. I haven't seen
this one either.
And I remember it being one of the most polarizing movies of that year, which made me want to watch it, but I just never got around to it. And at the time, there was all that mystery about, like, what is this movie even about? And then I kind of, you know, hearing about it in the debates kind of made me want to watch it more. But I'm curious about watching it. So maybe, Bryan, you and I have some homework to do.
And it's funny because it was actually like the debate about it that actually turned me off to it. Just like seeing the back and forth, I don't know, like the argument bored me to the point where I was like, well, if I'm this uninterested in the discussion about it, I can't imagine myself really being that into the movie. But now that there's a little bit of distance between that, I am kind of intrigued. Plus, I love Javier Bardem and Ed Harris, so I probably should give it a chance at some point.
Excellent.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird to me that they tried to make like the trailer, like they cut the trailer to make it seem like, I mean,
like a straight up horror movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think that first half plays into, and then where it ends up going, even though there are some horrific things that happen head stomping. I just found that the buildup was better than the payoff, but it's not an uninteresting movie. That's for sure. It's definitely, I wouldn't not recommend anyone see it.
Such a great endorsement.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to see that on the poster. It's not an uninteresting movie. And we will go to Bryan, and let me preface this, Bryan, by saying if you want to go with your original pick, your original second pick, you can. After looking at my notes, so no pressure, but
dude,
I'm sorry, but you know, we always have to have one little snafu, so we just need a sponsor for this, but.
So I do feel like then that I'll go with my original just because I feel like you can't talk about 2017 without talking about Get Out. That would be a crime against the genre. Now, the flip side of that is what the hell are we going to say that hasn't been said about it already? It's an amazing movie. Jordan Peele really showing that all of those hints and horror tropes that you saw from Key and Peele comes from someone who has a genuine love of the genre, and it's a movie that I rarely ever go to see a movie more than once in the theaters, and I saw this one twice. I would have seen it. I would have seen it 3 times if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott gets it.
Go boy.
But I think what the best thing I can say about this movie that I haven't necessarily heard, but I'm sure has been said, is that you can go to it twice and have 2 completely different experiences, and each one is equally interesting. Going in the first time not knowing what's going on and the tension of it building up is just a masterclass in suspense, and it's got that great ending, very satisfying. But then to go in and watch it a second time where everything that's going on with kind of this mind control and taking over of Black people's bodies, seeing all the little hints and nods to what's actually going on when you watch it the second time is so much fun to kind of pick up all those little hints and nuggets and Easter eggs throughout. So it's not too many movies can I say that about. Even ones that I do like going back to. Usually it's something that it'll be the same experience even if it is good. This time it was very different watching it that second time around.
Yeah, it's a very dense movie, not dense as in stupid, but dense as in packed with references and as you said, these little love letters to horror, but not only that, from the straight up horror side of it, it's so packed with social commentary and political discussion in each, woven in with the horror, not even like side by side, but they're interwoven into such a way that second or third time seeing it, as you said, it unfolds so much stuff that's in it that it rewards you with repeat viewings,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned seeing it in the theater, and I did only see it once in the theater, but it was one of the most memorable viewing experiences of the 2010s for me, and that's because the audience was so into it. I was sitting in like the second row, and it just felt like everyone was hanging on every single word. It was such a communal experience watching this with people, and just the applause like in the third half when the character of Chris just starts fighting back and like people are getting their comeuppance, and it just like there was just this sense of like joy by the end of the movie after the horrors that everyone had witnessed, and which makes me glad that Jordan Peele went with this ending as opposed to the other ending, which was more of a downer ending that had like a more of a Night of the Living Dead, George Romero vibe to it. But it was such a great experience, and like you said, Scott, it's the social stuff that's interwoven with the visceral horror, and the Sunken Place was the psychological element that I just did not expect at all. And a lot of people knew Jordan Peele like from Key and Peele, and obviously they did a lot of horror skits and stuff, so I think some people maybe weren't so surprised that he did something like this, but just the fact that he knocked it out of the park as much as he did in his feature debut as a director was amazing, and it's still one of the greatest achievements I think of this decade.
That ending, the original ending, I think he scrapped that because he felt like it's just too close to what actually would probably happen.
Yeah.
And that was like a mad downer. Like, oh, I don't need to be reminded of that. But no, I agree with everything that you guys have said. I love this movie, and I know that I originally picked this, but I saw that it was already picked, and I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, well, I feel like I've said a lot about this movie already, so I was like, yeah, I'll pick something else. But no, I love this movie, and again, I'm really glad that it was chosen because It came out of nowhere because, it came from Jordan Peele, and I know him as a comedian and from Key and Peele, and it just seemed to come out of nowhere. Like, wait, he's one of us? He likes horror movies? Oh my God, yes. And then to see him just address things that I think a lot of people of color think, and like a lot of our fears, a lot of our experiences, even like the gaslighting that we do to ourselves when we notice certain things happening. It's just so interesting to see that play out on the big screen for everyone to see. And then it did so well, and it started winning awards and getting nominations. And I just thought, oh my God, okay, this is exciting.
No, it's good that you didn't make it your pick, because what the world needs is another white man's opinion on it.
Which is why I felt compelled to bring it up.
Yes, of course.
You haven't heard from Bryan Christopher on the subject, and it really needs to be. My voice needs to be heard on this.
But like you said, Bryan, you can't really talk about this year without talking about Get Out. So I'm glad you picked it. And then, and then you got to really pick a third movie too, because then before we recorded, I said, well, I think Tamika has this one, so why don't you pick another one? And I'm sure we can reveal that one as well if you want to give it a shout out.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just give this one a quick shout out. So this is, I think, the first sequel that we will have brought up, and it's Creep 2. And
oh yeah,
Creep
Still
2
creeping.
It's one of the. It's one of the few sequels that I think is actually better than the original. For me, the original Creep is a so-so movie with a fantastic ending. Creep 2 is a movie that takes that fantastic ending and builds it into a very, very creepy movie. And just... I think kind of what held back the first one from being a great one is the dynamic between obviously Mark Duplass is great in most of the things he's in, but I just wasn't really connecting with his dynamic with the lead character, who I think was played by director Patrick Brice, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so in this one, the main character, played by Desiree Akavan, she brings an element of kind of her own mystery and her own potential kind of dark spots that I think pairs well with Mark Duplass's character. So just a lot of great tension and a lot of great dialogue. And when you have something that's just a two-person show, you really need to kind of be on board with both people. And I think they nailed it for the second one.
I remember Heather and I discussing this on a Corpse Club episode. I know she really is a fan of this one, and she thought it was as good as the first one. I didn't think it was. I still like it. I just didn't think it was as good as the first one, because I didn't feel it was different enough or fresh enough from the first one. So it kind of lost a bit of its luster for me, but I still really liked it.
And I have not seen the Creep movies. It's been on my to-do list for a while, and I think they're both on Netflix, or at least they were at some point. So I need to get on that, because I do love found footage. Yeah. And I think they're a little bit on the shorter side too. So, which is nice, because not every movie these days is, in that 80 to 90 minute window. So
you can get yourself 2 creeps for the price of 1 Irishman.
Maybe 2.5 or 2.5 creeps.
Possibly.
Yeah, I'm actually on the Creep 2 Wikipedia page. It's only 80 minutes. So actually you could watch both of these and still have an hour of The Irishman left.
Oh my gosh, I can multitask. I have 2 screens going at the same time. I don't know if that's how Scorsese intended me to watch The Irishman, but I think it might be how I watch The Irishman.
That's cinema, baby.
Right. Are you a fan of the Creep movies, Tamika?
Okay, so I know I've seen both of these films, but I for some reason remember the first Creep, that's more sharp in my mind. So even though I know I've seen Creep 2, and I even bought a pocket tee, like a Creep pocket tee from Cavity Curlers.
Oh, nice.
So I'm like, oh no, why is this fuzzy? But I do remember really enjoying it. And Mark Duplass, or Duplass, right? Is that how you say that?
Duplass? I think it's Duplass.
Duplass, okay.
With an R.
With
I guess trying to be fancy, I suppose.
Oh my gosh.
I always just really enjoy what I see him in. And Creep just, I don't know, movies like that, I can only probably watch like once or twice because I think they're like kind of, I don't know, like too realistic. That's not really the word I was going for, but I'm kind of blanking on what I really want to go with. And so that just like that kind of stuff really gets to me.
I know. In the second one, you get to see Mark Duplass's wiener.
Another poster endorsement.
You to bring that up.
Well, Scott, since you're on a roll, why don't we?
People want to know.
Move on to your second pick.
My second pick.
But you also had to call an audible on too, because I know you on Tragedy Girls, but someone already did say Tragedy Girls.
That's
so
right.
You just get two picks.
I'm picking a movie from 2017 that I never got to see until this year when it finally came on Netflix because the distribution for this thing was terrible. And that would be, and there's a good reason for it too, because a lot of people hate it, but I probably love it for some of the reasons that they hate it. And that is John R. Leonetti's Wish Upon.
Ooh, yes.
Has everyone seen this one?
I have not.
I have not, but I really, really, really want to because this is
Patrick
one.
Patrick has talked about this one extensively. And Adam Risky
as well.
Yeah. It's
yes.
It is something else. It is the kookiest story and so crazily told that it's hard to believe that it made it to the screen the way that it did. But
am I thinking of the right one, Scott? Is this the one with like the wish box and
that's
like
right.
Ryan Phillippe's? Okay,
yes.
Thinking about the right thing.
Yes. Because if you want to see a movie in which Ryan Philippe
with a capital L.
With a capital L.
That sounds right.
Anyway, good old Ryan there. He plays he's like a junkyard collector, him and his friend. And they get discarded bedposts. They rummage through garbage cans. And in the movie starts out, they're rummaging through the garbage cans in front of his daughter's high school. And she's like, "Dad, do you have to rummage through the garbage here? Please."
Oh, man. You're embarrassing me.
Yes, you're embarrassing me. And then, so they get this wish box and something happens. She becomes rich. There's a montage after she becomes rich of her and her friends going shopping like out of an 80s teen movie. Love it. They're living in this huge mansion. This all happens within the space of like 30 minutes. They're living in this huge mansion, and then Felipe comes out, plays the teenage girls a saxophone song. So he's a rummager by day, and he's like Kenny G by night. And that's really only the tip of the iceberg of the insanity that this movie is. It's a little bit Final Destination, mixed with, I don't know what it's mixed with. Annie, I don't know. It's just, it has incredible dialogue that has to be heard to be believed. Joey King is the lead. She was just nominated for an Emmy for what is it, The Acts or something like that with Patricia Arquette. What can you say? I'm a slut for wontons, which is an actual line in the movie.
Wow.
So go see it if you haven't. It's a blast. It is I understand why Adam Risky was praising it from when it came out. It's just so much damn ludicrous fun that you have to see it.
Would this make a good double feature with Wishmaster, which I know Adam Risky is a very big fan of?
Oh, why not? Sure. This could go with, you could pair this with anything, really.
Wow.
It's indescribable. It's a gem.
Oh my God, yes.
Right, Tamika?
Yeah, same. Oh my God. And even, okay, I won't spoil it because I really do want people to see it.
Yeah.
But even after things start to go awry and things hit the fan, she keeps making wishes.
Yeah. Well, that's a given, right? You should be expecting that. And here's another thing. This is another case of, this is PG-13. And it's another case of you don't care, you don't notice, it's not relevant to the story, right? This is what a treat. What a treat.
Oh, and Ryan, okay, after they hit the jackpot, they fall into all this money, right? He at some point continues to rummage through the trash.
Oh yeah, that's right. He doesn't give up his day job of rummaging through garbage cans. He's like Jethro Bodine. He lives in the mansion, but he's still out back by the cement pond.
He does it for the love.
Just get on it,
Money can't change him.
Get on this movie, guys. It's we could have a whole Corpse Club discussion on this movie.
So we now have to watch, Brian and I have to watch Mother and Wish Upon for two very different experiences.
Can I maybe just watch Mother?
Oh my God. You're not hooked after that?
You'll enjoy Wish Upon better.
Oh boy.
That's not a lie. That is actually not a lie.
I didn't say it was a better movie. I said you'll enjoy Wish Upon.
Yes.
That's cinema. Well, speaking of movies you may or may not enjoy, to really cover a wide range of films.
Go on.
I'm interested.
This is you could call it a divisive movie for my second pick. And I had to pick this one. I felt obligated to pick it because Jonathan's not recording with us on this episode. And longtime listeners know that Jonathan is a huge Alien fan and kind of our resident Alien expert, both the high points and the lower points of the franchise. So my pick is Alien Covenant.
You're picking Alien Covenant on behalf of Jonathan? He will kill you.
Well, so I should have. Oh my gosh! Yeah, I guess
he will kill you. No,
But
keep going. This is great.
According to Derek, Jonathan's favorite movie of 2017?
Yes, is Alien Covenant. I can hardly wait for him to hear this.
Oh boy. Well, I would like to know which one between Alien Resurrection and Alien Resurrection. Well, yeah, Alien Resurrection, yeah, and Covenant. Which one he likes more or less? But we'll just leave that. We'll let him come on and defend himself at some point.
He'll let you know. Don't worry.
And that also means that one of these days we're going to have an episode where I give my defense of Alien Resurrection. But that's neither here nor there.
There we go. Yes, we will give you the platform at some point for that. Now, this movie, I remember this was such a huge event film, and I actually am surprised when I was looking at the year this came out. It feels like it came out longer ago. Like this came out the same year as it. Really? Like it doesn't seem like that happened, but apparently, the calendar doesn't lie. And I remember on Christmas Eve of 2016, like the first trailer for this was released online. It was this huge event, and it was like 20th Century Fox's Christmas gift to everybody that we got to see the first trailer for the movie. And I really had high expectations, probably too high expectations going into this movie. I know we've done a whole Corpse Club episode on it. I think it's like what's one of the first 5 episodes we ever did was on, because this movie had just come out and we talked about it and the franchise. But so if you really want a deep dive, you can listen to that. I will say I didn't choose it because I loved it. I chose it because it was one of the bigger, like, anticipated movies of the 2010s. And I think because of that, it never could live up to those expectations. And it had kind of an identity crisis. I mean, it's like this Prometheus sequel, but then it's kind of like they heard feedback like, well, we want more aliens, so let's throw a Xenmorph in there. And I just felt like it never found its footing as like a Prometheus or an Alien movie. And I think, there's some bright spots. I think, who am I thinking of here? Danny McBride, I think is really fantastic in it. But what about everyone else? Are we all in the same boat here? Did anyone like really enjoy it?
So I haven't seen it, and I know we have a tradition here at Corpse Club of saying, even if we don't mean it, that like we need to check it out and give it a chance. I can definitively tell you I am not going to watch this movie. I have no interest. I haven't had any interest in Ridley Scott revisiting the Alien franchise since the end of Prometheus. If there's one franchise that I don't think needs prequels, it's the Alien franchise. You can only kind of hurt the mystique of what these things are. And I'm really not into Ridley Scott, George Lucasing his creation anymore. So I'm just, unless they start making ones that happen after a certain point, I'm not on board.
I can't think back to that episode, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't a fan. It's not for me. I know some people actually really dig it, and that is cool. I love that they love it, but it wasn't for me. It's certainly not the worst movie ever made. I don't even think it's the worst Alien movie, if you want to get all ranky. But yeah, it wasn't really good, unless there were elements of it that I liked and thought, and I think we discussed this originally. I like the Michael Fassbender character and what he's doing in the movie, and what his clone or the other android who is him exactly is doing in the movie. I think that's an interesting story that I wish they had pursued, but he was so keen to get them xenomorphs back in there that it kind of muddies up the stew quite a bit. But hey, if you want to see Michael Fassbender flirt with himself, this is the movie to see.
Yeah, at some point the prequels just became the Fassbender. I know they didn't get a third one yet, but it was like a Fassbender trilogy. It felt like it was the David show, which I think he did a lot of great things in it. And I think it's a great showcase for his acting. And I think he makes a really good android, but at some point it becomes too much. And I know it's also one of those movies where like a lot of not so smart decisions are made. And I know there's that argument, well, they don't know they're in a movie and everything like that. But when you're an astronaut in deep space, you kind of got to think that there's like protocol to follow, and you're not going to let the curiosity necessarily get the best of you. But that's, yeah. But what about Tamika? Do you find yourself an Alien Covenant fan in any sense, or are you tainted like the rest of us?
Oh no, I am so very tainted. That sounds weird. That sounded weird. No, I'm tainted. I am so not a fan of this movie. And again, I there are definitely parts of it that I really enjoyed, and there were some really cool like visuals, and there were a couple of cool kills, but
yeah.
No. And I learned after watching the movie in theaters the first time, because I did see this twice. I took someone else to see it because they wanted to see it as as a birthday gift.
Oh, okay.
That you had to watch like these like 4 short films beforehand,
right,
to give you like extra context.
That's right, because they showed what happened. I just don't
think you should have to do that. Yeah, like that's just weird. And
remember, Jonathan. Derek says this is your favorite movie.
No.
Of 2017.
I know.
It's on
usually,
record.
I thought he said
canon.
I thought he said of the 2000s.
Well,
maybe.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm not going to have a job after this episode airs.
No, you will. You will. We'll vouch for you.
No, I don't know. There's got to be a line somewhere.
Just put me in cryo sleep and wake me up when this all blows over. But it is interesting. I'm curious to see what, now that Disney has 20th Century Fox and they kind of have this ownership over Alien, like, you know, this is the last Alien movie that we got, and I'm curious what the next phase will be like, if this will be referenced at all, or if it'll be completely, if they'll kind of insert a like a sequel somewhere else in the timeline. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the 2020s.
Well, with the success of the Halloween kind of restart and jump ahead, and the I think Terminator Dark Fate did at least fairly well. This might be the time where it's right for Neil Blomkamp's treatment, where he ignored a couple of sequels and brought back Ripley and Hicks and everybody. I would love to see that.
Yeah, that got kiboshed already, though, didn't it? I think.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, this year even? I thought it kind of was left for dead, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, but I was just thinking that maybe with the resurgence of the trend of, bringing back some of the original characters and forgetting a couple of the sequels, maybe this might get some traction again.
I say, since that wouldn't be the kind of thing that would show on Disney Plus, but Disney also owns Hulu. Look for a Ridley Scott Hulu deal where he gets to make the third one for Hulu exclusively.
Yes, that would be curious. I think that would be curious. We never, now that we live in a Disney Plus world, you never know. And that will take us through our picks of 2017. But before we leave that year and head into the next in the near future or near past, whichever you prefer.
It's the near future from 2017. It's just not the near future from 2019.
It's all a matter of perspective. There's probably a few horror movies that we didn't mention, and as almost like a disclaimer at the end of an episode, I just want to, or side effects for a prescription, I just want to name some of the horror movies we didn't mention. There was a lot that came out that year, including Resident Evil, The Final Chapter, Underworld Blood Wars. So we had an Underworld movie and a Resident Evil movie in 2017.
What a time to be alive.
Play nice, Scott. We had The Devil's Candy.
That was good.
Which took a while. Like, I think that premiered on the festival circuit a couple of years before it was actually released. So,
yeah, I wasn't even thinking of that as a 2017 movie.
That was one where I was doing research. I'm like, I have to put this on the list like a few years down the line. The Black Coat's Daughter. We had Split from M. Night Shyamalan. The Girl with All the Gifts. The Void.
Yeah.
Raw. Friend Request.
No.
For your social media horror, A Dark Song, which we've heard a lot of good things about. Better Watch Out, aka Safe Neighborhood, I believe it was also known as.
I like that one.
That one certainly inverted what you would expect, because it's kind of like a reverse it's kind of like Home Alone, but if the kid was we'll just leave it at that.
Well, you just gave it away anyway, so
don't fill in the blanks, folks.
If I can take a minute for just to go back to A Dark Song, yes. I just want to give a quick shout out to Dead Ringers, who did a very good episode where they paired Bug and A Dark Song, and they had
my gosh,
very charismatic guest host on that episode to kind of help walk them through those movies. So I definitely recommend you checking that one out.
Nice.
You whore.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. Hashtag it. We had found footage 3D, Don't Knock Twice, the aforementioned The Belko Experiment, Bedeviled, Don't Kill It, which starred Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah.
That was a fun one.
Mike Mendez flick, yeah.
Yeah, that was really a blast. Sadako versus Kayako.
Yeah.
Little crossover there. Demonic. It Comes at Night, which I know is kind of polarizing. I believe that was an A24 release. Gerald's Game, so Mike Flanagan with Stephen King adaptation. And 1922, another Stephen King adaptation.
That was a good one.
Cult of Chucky.
Yeah.
Jigsaw.
Yeah.
Annabelle
Jigsaw.
Creation.
I'm one of the 6 people that liked Jigsaw. Sorry,
I was going to say that's kind of a hot take because I know that was not well received overall.
No, but I liked it, so whatever.
Played huge in Canada.
Right. Annabelle Creation, The Babysitter.
I like The Babysitter. I don't care what people say.
And I think they're working on a sequel.
That was Samara Weaving as well again.
Right.
That was so fun. It was fun.
So you were ahead of the time. You could see the trend that was coming. You knew this is someone to watch out for.
I don't know, man. I have a hard time wanting to watch movies directed by someone named McG.
Well, did you like the Charlie's Angels movies? Yes. Then you'll like The Babysitter.
Was that Brian who responded?
Thank you for answering for me, Scott. That was nice.
We also had The Killing of a Sacred Deer, 47 Meters Down.
Yeah.
The Bye Bye Man, which is very much in the same vein as Wish Upon, I believe.
But not nearly as good.
And that one I have seen, and that was a memorable experience. Rings, which was the latest entry in the Ring franchise.
Which I heard was so bad it was the scapegoat for why they're saying the Friday the 13th remake never got off the ground.
Ooh. You know, Rings, I thought had a lot of potential that it had such a great concept that it didn't really follow through on. I will say the last 2 minutes is it's kind of almost worth it just to watch for the last 2 minutes, but that's like the whole movie. So
there's your poster.
There you
Skip
go.
the first 88. Just watch the last 2.
We also have Amityville: The Awakening, Life, which co-starred Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, it's a good one.
The Shape of Water.
Yeah,
so
love
good.
it.
Leatherface.
Not so good.
The Flatliners remake.
Haven't seen it.
Or actually kind of sequel, depending on how you look at it. I haven't seen it, though, so I should that's just from what I've heard. So I'll let you all know after I watch it. Little Evil.
No.
The Evil Within was finally released, and I know, Brian, you did a retrospective on that.
Yes, that was my very first installment of Let's Scare Brian to Death that I did with Andrea Subasati from Rue Morgue. And it is an interesting little flick. I don't want to get too much into it now because I think we're going to be going on about a 3-hour episode at this point. But check out the interview. I thought it was a great interview, and it was I don't know. Interesting is really the best word I can use for it. Just the story behind the movie and the movie itself. It's unique.
It was a great interview, and it is a very interesting movie, especially the how you want to describe them, the nightmare sequences or the alternate reality sequences are kind of breathtaking in their creativity, and they're very good. I don't think the rest of the movie quite lives up to that level, but when it's doing its nightmare thing, it is really quite something.
Also released that year, Phoenix Forgotten, The Vault, Berlin Syndrome, The House Next Door, The Houses October Built To, Keep Watching.
Next Door. Oh, sorry.
Dave Made a Maze, which I really loved.
Yeah.
And lest we forget, I know I already mentioned it, but The Snowman.
That's right.
So there are the horror movies released that we did not chat about, but like Brian said, we could do a 6-hour episode if we chat about all of them. So,
well, this really is hammering home Jonathan's point that he's been making the last couple episodes, where it's like, this is where you're really seeing things start to blow up, and there's just so much content. Like, this is just the movies. That's not even getting into all the TV that came out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and on the TV side, you had Stranger Things, The Walking Dead. Supernatural is probably in season 35.
How dare you, Derek?
I say that lovingly. I
Wow.
admire the longevity. Respect.
He's saying it's tired and it needs to pack it in.
Are the Winchester boys, like, did they receive their AARP cards yet, or?
Now I think that was a jab, Tamika.
Don't take that, Jimmy. Don't take that, Tamika. Don't take that.
But there was a lot of good stuff. Channel Zero was going strong. So yeah, like I said, there's just a lot of content. Like, this is when we got to the point too where more streaming services are coming out. It's just almost impossible to really keep up with everything for your favorites list by the end of the year. Also, we had a couple of big video games that came out that year that I want to quickly mention. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which I haven't played that. Has anyone played that Resident Evil? I know Jonathan has, but
I've only played 5. Like, literally, that's the only Resident Evil I've played.
Yeah. Does that come on the Wii by any chance?
Not that I'm aware of, but they do have. When you get your VR set this Christmas, you can play it on that.
Okay. Is that what my Secret Santa's getting me, a VR set?
Well, you never know. if we go scavenging in the dumpster and find one like Wish Upon, we might be able to pull it off.
Sweet.
That one I know is big because it kind of put the franchise back as being like really scary, because I know it'd been kind of more action installments the last couple. This one had more of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe. So I'm actually really excited. I want to get a VR set at some point and play that. And then also The Evil Within 2 was released that year, and Friday the 13th, the game. So there was some good horror video games going on as well.
Speaking of which, when I tried to look up The Evil Within, the movie, that made for some interesting confusion when I just saw a bunch of stuff about The Evil Within video game.
Of course. Yeah. That's, no shortage of crossover there. I mean, it can't get any closer than that in name. So unless there's anything else anyone wants to say about 2017, I think we will hop in our time machine and head. It's kind of like when you go in a time machine, you just have to like cross the street. So you get in and then you're like, we'll stop right here.
Back to the near future.
With a capital T. So,
sure.
Yeah, 2 can play at this game. So just to get things started off with 2018, to help us transition, I will go through some of the new words that were just announced last year as being in the dictionary.
All right.
Some of them may surprise you. We have Instagram officially became a word. Airplane mode. And then we're going to do, we have mocktail, Generation Z, Tent City.
What?
Tent City?
That one's a little, I think, that might be in reference to like homeless camps and things. But
like, that is not at all new. Why is that just now becoming, as of 2018, a word?
Very, very good question. Kind of like airplane mode. Like, this has been around for a while. Why are we?
Well, airplane mode is 2 separate words that have existed in the dictionary like forever. Like, are we just putting words together and saying that's a new word?
It's kind of like Wheel of Fortune. It's just word or a phrase.
Airplane mode, see airplane, or see mode, or.
But I can't Google it because I'm in airplane mode.
Right.
There you go.
And then we have some abbreviation words that I'm sure you all will love. We have fave, we have adorbs, and guac. So those were rock the guac.
We are stupid as a society. We really are, and we deserve to be flushed down the cosmic toilet.
No,
with no paper.
Not a true. I have used the word adorbs.
Well, so have I. I'm
Scott,
just No, I'm with you. I'm saying us as a whole. Like, we all use these words, but to hear that they've been, added to the dictionary, it's like you're almost embarrassed. Like, really?
Like, for the definition of guac, is there just like a little finger emoji pointing up to the word guac, or I guess pointing down to the word guacamole?
I mean, I call my wife schmoopies, but I don't expect it to be in the dictionary the next day.
You never know, Scott. Just give it another year. I did just rewatch the movie Idiocracy, and maybe we are.
We're there, baby.
We are there, baby.
A little uncomfortably foreshadowing in some respects, and then also some pop culture moments from 2018. Just in case you forgot, in the 11 months since they occurred, we had the royal wedding between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
Who could forget?
We had the false alarm where residents of Hawaii got a text message that a ballistic missile was inbound and that they potentially only had minutes to live.
Good times.
That seems straight. I mean, was Rod Serling kind of communicating with us there from the beyond, or it just seems like a Twilight Zone episode? We also had the raccoon that scaled a skyscraper in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, I missed that. You sure that's not a local story? Did that one really go viral?
Oh, that was sweet.
No,
because people saved it. They put a little trap down, and then it climbed in it and the trap, and then they closed the door and saved it.
Well, you know what? That is adorbs.
Oh, yeah. See, there you go. It's you're already using it in a sentence. We had the first female Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And on a somber note, Toys R Us officially closed.
But they're back.
Well,
really?
somber for you guys. We're still open.
Oh my gosh! Another reason to head north for a little vacation.
That's right.
Well, no, they reopened them down here in the States too.
Really?
Apparently, it's more just like it's smaller scale, and it's more like kind of showing you like floor models of stuff that you can then purchase online. From what I've heard, it's now kind of a brand owned by Target, but in some fashion, there's now Toys R Us again.
It's a kiosk now, isn't it? Right next to Sunglasses Hut.
Yes. Yeah. You grab that, you bump over, you get your orange Julius, and you call it a day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Frenchie.
And it's manned by the giraffe mascot.
Yes. Yeah. Who can't fit into the kiosk.
Yeah. Same guy who runs the Pepperidge Farms kiosk. He toggles between the two of them.
Got a reverse hustle. Well, this time around, let's mix it up a little bit. Scott, why don't you kick us off for 2018
horror? Okay. Hot takes. Here we come. No, this one is, again, this is one of those movies that kind of a streaming darling, if you will. It popped up on Shudder, and that is Terrified, which was directed by Demian Rugna. And this one is one of those movies that shows that horror, when it chooses to just basically focus on its visual storytelling, can be really spellbinding. Terrified has some of the most amazing practical moments, surreal moments in a horror film that I've seen in a very long time. The story itself is kind of it's more of kind of a lackadaisical day in the life kind of story. It doesn't really have a lot of forward momentum, but the visuals that are plastered on screen will stay with me for quite some time. Have you guys seen this yet?
I have not, and I feel so
still
bad.
On my to-do list.
This is one that everyone really like. I know Heather really liked this one too last year, and her and Jonathan were talking about it. And like you said, it came out on Shudder in the States in 2018, and I just never got around to it. But then the imagery, just from like the trailer and the images we used on Daily Dead, was really creepy.
Scott, if I have to choose between this and Wish Upon, can I do this one instead?
Why are you fighting the wish upon? Don't fight it. Embrace it. Don't be scared.
Bring on the wish
There's
upon.
room for both wish upon and terrified.
Yeah. Yes.
Is this? Did you get around to watching this one, Tamika, or do you also have to play catch up on this?
I'm sorry. I was trying to think because I was gonna add my 2 cents, but I was trying to figure out if this was the right movie because I initially thought that this was about the clown. I forget
Terrifier.
That's Terrifier.
But yeah,
Yep.
and I realized that, oh no, that's called Terrifier. But
Yeah.
I do think that I have seen this because
This
I
one
remember
takes place all in one neighborhood in Buenos Aires.
Yes,
And,
this is
and it goes
okay.
from one house. Events happen in one house, and then events happen in another house, but they all take place in this same neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I was like, just thoughts were racing. I'm like, is this about the clown movie? No. I think this is set in Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure. But yeah, no, this movie is there's a reason why it's called Terrified. Because I remember for some reason movie posters like always stick out to me. And there's the image of like, is it a man?
The boy.
But like its face is like
Sitting at the
super like
table?
distorted and like the eyes are all blacked out.
Oh, where his face is like sliced in two, kind of.
Yeah,
And you can like
like
see his face like sliced open.
You guys will love it. It's really kooky.
it's really
kooky.
really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super scary. Oh my god.
And I think it's still on Shudder too. So again, no excuses.
Yeah, you got to check it out. Yeah, this, and then so that you can calm your nerves, then watch Wish Upon Bryan.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Get me right to sleep.
Now, interestingly, late last year, it was announced that there is an English language version of Terrified in the works that is supposed to be produced by Guillermo del Toro and directed by Damien Rugna, who directed Terrified. So that's really interesting that they would have the opportunity to direct like a remake of their own movie.
Right.
So
You see that every once in a while. Didn't the guy
That's happened before.
Funny Games did that, right? Because I think that was originally.
Oh, okay.
I forget which country that was from originally, but the same guy who did the original did an English language version.
Yeah. There was another one I'm trying to think of, and I carry on because I won't remember it, but I'll remember it at 3 this morning, and we'll start up the pod. Oh, we'll probably still be going.
Well, yeah, just let us know when you remember. In the meantime, great pick. And let's go to Bryan. What is your first 2018 pick?
My first pick for 2018 would have been the top of my favorites for 2018 had I actually managed to see it in 2018. It is the remake of Suspiria from Luca Guadagnino. And I'm sure I butchered that, but I got as close as I could. So here's the thing about me and Suspiria. The original, I think I'm one of 3 people who just doesn't click with that movie. I won't even say I dislike it. Like, I recognize the kind of the master work that Argento does in it. It's just not one that has ever resonated with me. So for me, a remake was something that was kind of ripe for, taking the base level content and turning it into something that, maybe would connect with me a little bit more. And this movie did that and then some. I love pretty much everything about it. I think Dakota Johnson is actually really good as the lead. I love Tilda Swinton playing not 1, not 2, but 3 roles in the movie. But I think what really nailed the whole thing home for me was the ending. This is a movie that only takes some of the very broad strokes about the original and just takes it into a very different direction. And the ending for me was really phenomenal because it took, in the Mother Suspiria, who, in the original is just this kind of flat out evil being, the way they've changed it into something that's more complex. She's more complex and nuanced, and is someone who is both capable of great compassion, as you see with her ending scene with one of Tilda Swinton's characters, and also more than willing to blow your head up if you cross her. So just the direction they took this, the cinematography is gorgeous. The set design is gorgeous. I liked having it in the backdrop of what would this have been like? I think it was 1970s Berlin. Just everything about it was just much more in line with kind of the sensibilities that really jive with me. And it's a fantastic movie, maybe one of the best remakes of all time, and just one that I really look forward to revisiting from time to time in the future.
Yeah, that was, I think, another one, kind of like It and Alien Covenant in 2017. I think Suspiria was one of the most anticipated and also maybe apprehensive films of 2018, just because so many people do love the original, and I'm glad that we found the third person who doesn't quite click with that. I know the search is over after the first two were found, but that is I mean, everyone comes to things from a different perspective, and I think this movie does do a really good job of not only doing its own thing, but fleshing out aspects and really building its own story from the foundation of the original film, and still having its own identity, and really embracing the dance and giving into the dance and the performances. I agree with you. It's hard to find a lot of fault with what this movie does, and I think it's so stylish. I almost feel like people are still catching up to this in some ways. Like, I think the horror community is well aware of it, but I think this will be another one where over time, more of like the mainstream audience or just the general, maybe casual horror fans will discover this movie. And it is a 2.5 hour movie, so it's definitely an investment, but a worthwhile one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just Tilda Swinton's many performances alone. I'm just so in awe of her. I think I mentioned her in the last retrospective we did for 2015 and 2016. She's just so, I love her. We count the ways. I'm sorry. I'm done crushing. I'm done. I gotta say that it's a film, I think, for me that I have to watch more than once to really, I guess, get everything, like see everything, like really kind of understand fully what's going on. And every time you watch it, it's like, oh, okay. And that, and oh, okay. Because I'm not a fan of the original. And I think.
Okay. So we've got two of the three.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Now Scott reveals himself.
But the remake definitely got me. And normally I always say that you shouldn't go past 2 hours. Like most things just don't need to be longer than 2 hours. But I found myself wanting more. Like, I wish the film was longer, actually.
Yeah, and
did anybody else feel that way?
A shade over 2.5 hours. But yeah, I didn't think anything. There was nothing. I didn't think it dragged at all, and I don't think there was any fat that needed to be trimmed from this one.
Yeah, no, I saw this in the worst theater in Calgary for seating. They're like seats from 1986 that haven't been changed, which is a shame because this is the theater that will get like the one night showings of the Rob Zombie movies, and they're the ones that will show a movie like Suspiria, but they need some, Pow Pow needs better seating than what was offered. But having said that, even at 2.5 hours, I did not budge. I persevered because it's an incredible movie, and I have it on Blu-ray. I bought it, but I'm almost scared to. I haven't watched it since I bought it. I'm almost scared to do it because, I don't want to break the illusion that it was kind of a perfect viewing for me when I saw it in the theater. That I'm hoping that watching it again, I'll have those same feelings. But you ever have that where some movies are just, you watch it once and you want to watch it again, but you don't want to break that magic spell, This is one of those.
I haven't watched Pontypool since I first saw it because it was so
same
perfect
thing.
that I don't want that to be ruined by, it's even one of those things where it might not be the movie's fault. You just might not be in a good zone at the time when you see it. I definitely get that.
Yeah, because sometimes it's at what point in your life did you watch it? What was going on then, and will you have the same chemical reaction almost to it if you watch it now, or even daytime versus nighttime too?
Yeah, but on the flip side of that is Scott, quit being such a little drama queen and just watch the damn thing again because it is so good.
And if we want to replicate that experience, we can get the theater to donate a chair to bring to your house.
Oh God, I'm telling you, I can only do recliner seats now. I know I'm spoiled and holy first world problems, but our theater is all recliner seating now, and it's delightful. It really is. I don't know how we watched movies before. We were savages.
Indeed. Especially in these states that get the snow and you just want to put your feet up instead of sitting in your own melted snow puddle. Am I right?
Very specific, but okay. I agree.
I must still have the snowman on my mind for some reason. Well, I figure that out. Let's go to Tamika. What is your first 2018 pick?
A movie that shouldn't in any way be on this list, but I cannot help myself because, Wish Upon, truth or dare, baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see you.
Truth or I know.
I see you.
It's so good, bad. I feel like now I'm starting it. I'm selling it. I know. I know. I feel like I'm selling this now. But I believe it was directed by Jeff Wadlow, and I remember him saying that the face that when the truth or dare demon, I know it has a name, but I can't think of the demon's name.
That's the Soundgarden Black Hole Sun face.
Yes, that face. He said that he was inspired because of Snapchat, the Snapchat filters that distort your face and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Instagram does stuff like that too. But yeah, so it's just so very much, I think, made for the younger millennial side, for them.
Oh, for sure.
Although, I mean, I being an older millennial also use social media, we all use social media. But I mean, this feels very much geared to the under, I guess, 21 crowd. But it's just so big. That Snapchat filter is just the Snapchat filter face is just so goofy, but also kind of disturbing all at the same time. But yeah, it's just so good, bad. There's there are these really super thin characters, but they do them the most they make the wildest choices, right? So, okay, let me just do a quick brief breakdown of how this truth or dare game works. Okay. So you have to pick. So if somebody picks truth, right, then you can either pick truth or dare, but you can't do 2 truths in a row. I mean, you can't do 3 truths in a row. So it's not like you can go truth, and somehow avoid doing some dangerous dare, So if there's a second truth, then the third person has to do a dare. And of course, because it's a demon, you're going to have to probably set someone on fire, which I actually do think maybe happens in this movie.
You said that so cheerily, like set someone on fire. Like
it does sound like a demon dare.
Yeah, very much a demon dare. I wasn't being giddy at setting anyone on fire. I was just like,
that's what it sounded like.
Giddy, like thinking about this like goofy, semi-bad movie.
You know what it is for me. It's like the slasher era in the 80s. These teen movies, in the sense that you look back at the slashers and you had your really good ones and you had your like really, really bad ones. And then you had a bunch in the middle that were like you would throw on a Saturday night and you wouldn't necessarily gush about them or even particularly remember them, but you had a good time with them. And there's a whole lot of these teen movies now that are starting to, there's enough of them now that you can start to make that graph. Like for me, like Wish Upon would be like the phantasm of the teen movies because it makes no sense whatsoever, but it's wonderful.
Yes.
And then Truth or Dare would be one of those kind of ones in the middle that were like, yeah, that was fun. And then and then you maybe don't remember or talk about it all that much a couple weeks later. But hey, while it was on, it was kind of fun.
Yes. Oh, Scott, you get me.
Get you, girl.
It's showing
I told
this.
you, I see you.
Yes, I see you.
There's now like this kind of subgenre too of social media horror, because like we had been talking about Unfriended on a previous episode, but then Countdown recently came out, which was about the haunted app, and then Friend Request, which we kind of briefly mentioned. So there's all these we're seeing like a lot of these social media horror movies now, and it'll be curious, will it kind of continue? I'm like, it just seems like, or like maybe, I know this one doesn't necessarily like involve social media like through and through, but it definitely like is a factor in it in some respects. So I'm curious like how this will, if this will continue to build like its own kind of subgenre going forward.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are we going to get like killer Google plays? Like, okay, Google, and then it jumps off the couch and attacks you or something.
Alexa becomes sentient and just starts like,
oh my gosh, it writes
people.
itself.
Yeah.
Are you in the Truth or Dare camp, Brian?
No, it's another one I haven't seen. So I'm at the point. I'm not saying I'm not going to watch this one, but here's my list of to-dos. I've got Terrified at the top. I've got Mother second. I've got Truth or Dare. I've got Wish Upon, and then I've got Getting Hit by a Car, and then I've got Alien Covenant.
Wow, so these are ranked then, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Eventually we do have enough of these where we'll have to do like a catch-up episode where we talk about the movies that we needed to watch. We said we were going to watch, and then see what we thought of them, because it's becoming a long list.
Yeah.
And also, interestingly, Jeff Wadlow was directing the new Fantasy Island movie for Blumhouse. So I'm curious what.
That's right. Yeah, that could be good.
Which also stars Lucy Hale as well from.
That's right.
From Truth or Dare. So
stay tuned. Truth or Dare. Well,
I will take this opportunity for my first pick. I'm digging deep for this one, as on par with my usual picks. I'm going with Hereditary.
Never heard of it.
Damn it, Scott.
This one may be a little more indie than it, but maybe you've heard of it, maybe not. The feature film, kind of like Jordan Peele, like just a great feature debut from Ari Aster. Just so like disturbing in all the right ways. I know Midsommar, a lot of people consider that to be a much more like polished movie or like a more enjoyable experience. I know Hereditary is kind of jarring in its third act where things really take a hard left turn, but I really like that though, because it feels like it does things that I really didn't expect it to. And I also really enjoyed Midsommar, but Hereditary to me is just so twisted. And I think Toni Collette really makes that movie. And it's really a crime that she didn't get any like Oscar love for that performance, because I think it's a very difficult performance. I can't imagine that it was very fun to go to that kind of a headspace, but just that whole like dysfunctional family is so believably well done that even if some of the other like parts of the movie might seem a little outlandish, because the family is so like hauntingly realistic, I feel like like everything just kind of works. Anything else that comes into that picture just works because of that. So I gotta say, Hereditary is still one of my favorite movies of the decade. Now that a little time has passed, how does everyone feel about Hereditary? Do you like it, or have you cooled off on it a little bit?
I still remember when I left the theater after first seeing it. I was just I think my brain was it didn't really know what to make of it. And it was one of those things where, as like 2 weeks went by and I couldn't stop thinking about it, I realized there must be something to this movie that's just kind of like attaching itself to my consciousness. And the way it was able to do that makes me really appreciate it. And I really, really do love it. And I know, Scott, I remember when the original, because I think you did like a pretty full episode about that included Hereditary. Yeah. I know, Scott, you weren't a big fan of how long he held off on the horror element of it. I did really enjoy the dysfunctional family element to it, and it really, for me, gave that third act, it was an exclamation point at the end that some visuals that I won't really ever forget, like the visual of Toni Collette possessed, like slamming her head against the bottom of the attic entrance is just something that like makes me shiver every time I think about it. And then of course her final move with the piano wire, I believe it was.
Oh gosh.
It's just there's not. And I agree, Scott, there's not a lot of horror in terms of quantity, but when they do come out, they come out swinging.
No, there's a lot of great stuff in this movie. That I think what I would have liked to have seen is the mystery component, the story behind what he's chasing. That's teased at throughout. I thought if the movie had a stronger thread of that running through it while still dealing with the family stuff, it would have been that much. It would have been that much better for me. I just thought that could have been more effectively woven throughout, just to give it kind of a coherency. Because again, it's. As a lot of our horror movies are these days. Again, it was a long movie. It was two plus for sure, I think. And so it you can't ask a movie to demand your attention, right? It has to earn it, and it would have earned it even more for me if it had that stronger through line of slowly uncovering what's going on behind everything.
The pieman element.
When you say more of like a solid through line of what's going on, like behind the scenes, are you referring to like the cult?
Yeah. So when that element is first introduced, and it seems like it's going to be about Toni Collette uncovering what is going on with her mother and these people that are showing up, coming out of the woodwork, right? I just felt that more conventional element would have worked better. Again, that's for me personally. There's still a lot that I really dig about the movie. I mean, the performances and a lot of the visuals are insanely good. I would have loved the movie even more if I had just seen. That's what I wanted to see more of, was the stuff woven earlier in about the cult.
Okay.
Just because I think that was such a strong angle of it, and it was a cult that I'm not familiar with at all. So I was intrigued by that. And I think if it had been a major portion of that, or that running stronger through it with still the family stuff, that it would have been great for me. But again, I'm not Ari Aster, and that's the movie he made. And there's a lot I still appreciate about it.
Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah, I love Hereditary. Mm.
Yeah, it's one of those two where I haven't watched it since I saw it in theaters, and it's one of those where I'm not really sure if I'd ever be like, hey, I want to watch this today because I want to feel good. It's just, I don't know what the rewatchability factor is there. I think like Midsummer probably has a lot better like rewatchability factor because it's more of a sunny movie and it's cheerful in like a deceiving way with its horror. But Hereditary is just so heavy, and I think that's where its power lies, but it's also almost painful in some respects too. So, but well done, yes. Ari.
I bought the Blu-ray because I loved it so much. I have not opened the Blu-ray since I bought it because I'm kind of in that same boat where it's like, since now I know what's coming, like I'm going to have to be in a very specific headspace to want to spend 2.5 hours going down that road.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Very good point. And, Ari's definitely kind of emerged as one of those people that, like Jordan Peele, where you're excited to see what he does next because he's such a distinct voice.
See, that's what's the great thing is for me, I think he just keeps getting better because I actually much prefer Midsummer to Hereditary, and I can hardly wait till I get it on Blue. Hopefully Santa brings it.
Time will tell. And there's this kind of a quick aside. There's a theory that those two movies are in the same universe because the couple from Midsummer, like it looks like they're walking into a store in Hereditary from like behind them.
I remember seeing that story.
So,
yeah, I've heard someone put out that theory. Yeah.
Or maybe it was CG inserted a la Star Wars. I don't know. We'll see.
There you go.
Before we start our second round of picks, I want to step back here for a second. Let's turn on some music, see if there's anything Scott likes. Some of the Billboard Hot 100.
This could be a good game. Okay, let's go.
Hot 100 Billboard songs from 2018. We have Havana featuring Camila Cabello and Young Thug.
No.
Perfect, Ed Sheeran with Beyonce.
Can we have him not have a career anymore? That would be nice.
That's right. Brian, you're not the biggest Ed Sheeran fan.
I'm not.
The Game of Thrones appearance didn't even do it for you?
No.
Okay. Duly noted. Okay. We have God's Plan and Nice for What from Drake.
No.
We have This Is America from Childish Gambino.
That's a good one.
Yep.
Featuring probably one of the biggest or most influential music videos of the 2010s. Psycho, Post Malone featuring Ty Dolla $ign.
No.
We have In My Feelings from Drake.
No.
We have Girls Like You, Maroon 5 featuring Cardi B.
No.
Actually, if you could get rid of Maroon 5 before you get rid of Ed Sheeran, that'd be fine.
All right, writing that down.
Thank you.
Thank You Next from Ariana Grande.
Sure.
And Sicko Mode from Travis Scott.
Nice.
So those are
nice.
some of the big songs on the airwaves in 2018.
Batting 1,000 for Mr. Drebit.
Right?
Yeah. I'm sure if you go onto Spotify, some of the 70s and 80s rockers, they will release a new single. And I should have included that in this list because I'm genuinely curious about that as well. But
I'm just an old fuddy-duddy. There is some of this modern music you kids like that I like too. So,
well, that's enough to warm all of our hearts.
I love the Hanson. Does everyone love the Hanson?
It's
I love
Snowed
the
In
Hanson.
time. Take out the Snowed In album. Mbop.
Mbop.
Keep it simple with the mbop. And some movie. Okay, Scott, we might have better luck with this. Some non-horror movies released in 2018. Avengers: Infinity War.
Yeah.
Incredibles 2.
No.
Black Panther.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have Aquaman.
Yeah.
Arguably,
I love that one.
Probably the best received DC movie we've gotten in a long time. Aquaman.
They found color in that one.
Yeah,
right?
Imagine that. It took James Wan to find the color, to bring out this vibrant side of the universe that was hiding there all along.
I still love that they're making a horror movie based off of the creatures from Aquaman.
That is amazing to me. Like, the Trench, I think they're calling it. Mm-hmm. And it's like you can see James Wan starting to work his Conjuring universe magic over there, where he's like, "Hey guys, we got this other character over here that could probably do well." I don't know if that will happen, but I actually really hope it does, because I want to see what that would look like. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah,
I love it. Best Spider-Man movie ever.
That was a great movie. Mission Impossible Fallout.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had Deadpool 2. How much fun. Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah, loved it.
That was, I love the Ant-Man movies as well. We had Venom, which made a ton of money at the box office.
I liked Venom.
Which will tie into my second 2018 pick, but we'll get to that.
Intrigue arises. We had Solo, A Star Wars Story.
No.
Nah.
Kind of a horror sci-fi hybrid, Annihilation.
Yeah.
Which, you still need to see that one?
I still haven't seen that one yet.
Put it on your list there.
Yeah, that is an
that
experience.
might actually be right after Terrified. I really do want to see Terrified. I need to see that sooner rather than later.
We had Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
I liked it.
Also known as Dinosaurs in a Haunted House.
Yeah.
We had First Man. We had Ocean's 8.
No.
Ralph Breaks the Internet.
No.
The Favorite. The Grinch. Black Klansman.
Yeah.
We had Mary Poppins Returns.
Haven't seen it yet.
We had The Meg, which is more horror comedy.
Which is meh.
Crazy Rich Asians. A Star is Born.
Yeah.
And just a ton of films. Bumblebee.
Yeah.
Searching, which is another one that...
Yeah.
That was a great one. I love that movie.
Sicario, Day of the Soldado.
Nah.
Widows, Robin Hood, the list goes on. We even had Pacific Rim Uprising.
Did we, though?
Well, I guess it depends who you ask. But and Ready Player One. We can't forget that. So,
Can't we, though?
Creed 2, Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. I mean, the list really does go on. So, but enough of the non-horror. Let's get back to horror. I believe it is Scott. I think it's your turn for pick number 2 of 2018.
Okay.
What do you got for us?
Well, you know what? Who doesn't like a good slasher? I certainly love a good slasher, and we're seeing quite a bit more of them nowadays, and that's good news. And here's one that I think went right under the radar. As a matter of fact, I saw it the same day that I saw Crazy Rich Asians, and there was about me and 3 other people. That's how well they advertised it. Gregory Plotkin's Hellfest. Has anyone seen this one yet?
I still need to see it. I feel so bad because I wanted to see it in theaters too.
It's like they're hiding it, and I don't know why. It's the marketing on it was really poor. And just not enough people went and saw it, and it's kind of a shame because it's a really well-made, solid slasher movie that, takes place inside a carnival that caters specifically to this kind of thing, right? It's terrific. It's a lot of fun. It's fast-paced. The cinematography is great. It's the perfect atmosphere for a fun horror flick. The cast is really good. It's a pretty soft R, almost a PG-13, really, but there are a couple really, really good deaths. There's an all-timer in this movie, actually. It's really good, and I wish more people were talking about it.
Yeah, because Tony Todd is in it, and I just love him.
Yeah, he has a small part, but he's fun. It's just a shame that it didn't get the promotion, but hopefully, it'll have a long shelf life, I hope.
Yeah.
I feel bad for not seeing it because I know it came out kind of right before, or like a month before Halloween.
Yeah.
It's that perfect Halloween season movie, and it had a great cast. Like Bex Taylor Klaus, I really enjoyed in the Scream TV series. And yeah, I don't know. It is weird though, because like you said, it just didn't seem like it got the push it really deserved with the like just the whole vibe of it. It just kind of came and went a lot faster than it should have.
Yeah.
And Plotkin, interestingly, he was the editor on Happy Death Day, and this was like his feature-length debut as a director. So he had actually, and he had been the editor for Get Out. So he's worked on some really big horror movies in the 2010s, and then this was like his feature debut. So hopefully he gets to bring something else to life soon as director as well. But in the meantime, I got to watch this.
It's slick, like you said, all that stuff that he worked on. He's certainly coming to the table with a lot of solid craft behind him. And it's out there now. And I say to everyone, if you haven't seen it and you want to see a really good slasher with a lot of atmosphere, check out Hellfest.
And then do a double feature with Bloodfest.
I don't like Bloodfest as much, and they're like completely different movies, even though it's essentially the same setting, if that makes sense. In tone, they're completely different. Hellfest is more of a straight horror, and Bloodfest is more of a horror comedy.
Gotcha. Okay. The Fest movies were strong this year. So keeping that in mind, let's go to Brian. What is your second pick? I know you'd kind of teased that Venom would lead into this. I'm curious.
So can anybody... Oh, you all know what it is. So I will just come out and say it. It is Leigh Whannell's Upgrade. And I say it's got a connection to Venom because when it came out around the same time as Venom, and it was getting a lot of flack from people for kind of calling it like a poor man's Venom, partially because it stars Logan Marshall Green, who people were giving crap as being a poor man's Tom Hardy. And anyone who actually believes that, I would like to slap them sharply across the face because Logan Marshall Green is amazing all on his own. I've been a big fan of his ever since The Invitation. And so the funny thing about this, though, is that just through whatever, life getting busy and whatnot, I hadn't seen it until this weekend. So I'm glad we just kind of nice serendipity that we decided to do this episode this week because I really did love this movie. It was one of the few movies that I started watching it at like probably midnight or 12:30, fully expecting to fall asleep within 15 minutes because I'm a million years old. But it engaged me completely from the start, and I was wide awake through its runtime. And it's kind of like Death Wish by way of a Cronenberg movie. It's this very basic revenge tale that turns very unbasic when you introduce STEM, which is this artificial intelligence that gets inserted into Logan Marshall Green's spine so that he can walk again. But it can also think, and it can also talk. And so it gives him some really interesting abilities, kind of verging on superhuman abilities, just because it is being controlled by a computer. And I think one of the most amazing things about this movie is how good it looks, given that it had a budget of $3 million. That is a tiny budget for, I think, what this movie pulls off. And it is just a lot of fun, and it's kind of a great throwback B-movie roller coaster ride that I really, really did like.
It's, what it is for me when I think of this movie, I think of a Carpenter and Escape from New York, in the sense that, like you said, here, Whannell had $3 million. what a person with imagination can do with $3 million can sometimes replace what someone can do with 300 million. If they're a strong enough director and they have a strong enough vision. And like Carpenter, Winnell has that. He takes a pittance of a production budget, and this thing looks like it's 10 times what it actually cost, or 100 times what it actually cost, because it's filled with imagination and really great craft, and you fully believe and are immersed in this universe, even though so much of it is left, to your imagination. It's a terrific movie.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be so heartfelt as well, because it reminded me from the trailers, it reminded me of that movie Hardcore Henry for some reason. So I thought it was going to be kind of like that. Like, it was going to be really, really heavy on the action, and it's like set in the future. So I thought it'd be like some cool like cars and whatnot. But there's this really beautiful love story involved in the movie as well, and it got me in my cold 80s chrome heart. It made me feel things.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm feeling.
And this is a great like artificial intelligence type story too, where doesn't even feel like science fiction anymore. It feels like this is becoming more of a reality in our world than we initially thought. So I think it's super timely in a lot of ways, but it also has that vintage kind of Escape from New York, like vintage futuristic blend that you mentioned, Scott, where it feels just perfect for the Carpenter lover that is in all of us. So yeah, this was, I think, probably one of the biggest surprises of the year. I mean, Leigh Whannell had done great work before this, but just the fact that he really pulled this off on the budget that he had and was as innovative as he was. And then I think this probably helped him get the Invisible Man gig as well. And I'm excited to see what he does with that next. And time will tell. We'll be talking about that one on our 2019 episode, or 2020, I should say. That's in the near future. That actually is in the near future. Oh my gosh, it does all come full circle.
It had to happen.
So we're going to do a near past episode on 2020.
That's right.
Yes.
Broken clock, right choice a day, etc., etc.
And as we hurtle towards the near past or the near future, depending on how you look at it, Tamika, what is your second 2018 pick?
My second 2018 pick is also set in the near future. If we're talking about, which
no, I think that's the correct way.
We're meaning that when we say that now. Okay, maybe not. Scrap that. But it's A Quiet Place.
Nice.
I didn't really know what to expect from this film either, and I feel like I say that a lot, but it's true because I try to stay away from trailers, and I try to stay away from like what I hear people saying, like the groundswell surrounding a movie, just so I can try my best to go in completely just fresh. And I definitely went in like not really knowing a whole lot outside of that there were these like creatures, so you had to be quiet to keep them like off your radar, like keep them, I guess you get to keep yourself off their radar. And it was just so like minimal and just beautiful, and I know it's called A Quiet Place, but there's a lot of quiet, and I've never been more entertained by a film that's just like there's a lot of silence. It's quiet for a good portion of it, and it's just tense and beautiful. And this a movie about this family and what that looks like despite this horrible situation that the world has found themselves in, or I guess the world, I don't know. Is it the world or is it just like America? Interesting.
I think it's the world, but then again, it's kind of left open in some respects.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about that now. Now that I've said that out loud, like, wait, is it the world?
That was one of my favorite theater going experiences of that year because it's a gamble. If it doesn't work, you get a lot of people chattering while you're listening to the silence. When it works, and this one did, in at least the viewing that I had in the theater, you could have heard a single kernel of popcorn hit the aisle like a thunderstorm. It was so quiet. And it becomes a totally immersive experience. The way this movie, the sound design is, it's brilliant because the story itself is very simple. And so for it to really work, those particular senses have to be amplified. And the way they use sound in this movie and lack of it is just brilliant. And it was a movie that you sat in the theater and you could almost hear yourself holding your breath in because you're waiting for the next moment. Such a great movie.
So here's the thing about A Quiet Place for me. It holds this weird spot for me in movies. There's only two of them I can think. It's this one and a movie called Gravity, where if you remember, Gravity's the one with Sandra Bullock, George Clooney. They're stuck in orbit, and Sandra Bullock's got to figure out a way to get back home. And these are both movies I saw in the theater, movies that I absolutely had a blast of an experience with, but also one that I don't feel like would reward with a second viewing. I know we were talking about movies where they were so perfect the first time that we don't want to revisit them because we're worried that some of the shine would get taken off. This is one that I'm almost certain it would. I really love the experience. I love the movie, but it's just not one that I feel like I need to see again. Like it was, for me, that was kind of a one and done. Like I would even rate it as like an 8 out of 10, but it's also one that I just don't feel the need to ever go back to because I got everything that I would want to out of that first viewing. Does that make any sense to anybody at all? And does anybody have a similar experience with any other movies, or is that just me being weird?
I think it makes sense. I mean, for me, I think it would be, I could watch it again, but I'd want to almost watch with people who haven't seen it just so I can see their reaction to it, because it is such a unique storytelling method that they use, like that Brian Woods and Scott Beck, they wrote that initial screenplay, and then John Krasinski came in and worked on it as well. And just the way that they all approach the storytelling is so unique that I think it'd be fun to watch other people react to it. And that's why I think that seeing it in the theater was so cool, because you're watching it with everyone and experiencing the silence, and which is like another character in the movie. It's like sitting in the theater with you. And so, yeah, I could see it from that point of view. It's I think it would be fun to revisit. Well, especially because now I'm really curious, because now we're going to get a sequel to it too. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to revisit that world. But yeah, I can totally see your point of view though. And I have movies like that too, where I'm like, one is enough sometimes, or I have to watch it with someone who hasn't seen it yet.
Back in 2003, I went to a double feature of House of a Thousand Corpses, and then right after I watched Identity. Identity is one of those movies for me. I really enjoyed it in the theater, and when the reveal came out about what was actually happening, I thought that was really cool. And then when I think back on it, now that I know that reveal and what is happening, I wasn't interested anymore in watching it. So I can dig that.
Because you knew the magic trick?
Yeah, or the magic trick, once revealed in hindsight, maybe didn't prove as effective as the magician thought he was doing the magic trick. I don't know. It's hard to put your finger on it, right? It's just
yeah,
one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly a great pick, though. I mean, it's definitely made a lot of money at the box office. It looks like over 340 million globally that it raked in, and on a pretty modest budget, we're looking at like 17 to 21 million, according to my Wikipedia research here. But it was such a success that, like, even though I don't really think anyone imagined doing a sequel, they're doing one now, and it's going to carry on in the next decade. So it's definitely worth mentioning for sure.
Plus Emily Blunt forever. So,
oh my gosh, and her performance is next level.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Watch out for the damn nail.
Yes.
I hate feet stepping on nails in movies. I just hate it.
Do you like fast forward Home Alone when Daniel Stearns?
It is a hard scene to watch. It really is. I mean, as violent as that movie is, that's the part that gets me the most. Like, I can watch the paint cans all day, but it's but they did. I don't even think they did that part in Better Watch Out. So that just tells you something.
No.
And then it looks like it's back to me for our final pick. Hard to believe we're at this point already. And I hope I don't disappoint. I am going back to Haddonfield with Halloween 2018.
Attaboy. Yes.
I couldn't ignore it. It was just such a huge movie. I mean, we've talked about movies that people looked forward to throughout the 2010s. I think this had probably the most buzz just based on the surprise announcement and the fact that they got Jamie Lee Curtis to come back, and that we're doing a direct sequel to the first Halloween, and like everything about it was just so huge. And I think it as a movie as a whole, like I had to like marinate on it a while. Like, I think I loved everything they did with Jamie Lee Curtis. I think her performance is phenomenal, and it really does show like the effects of trauma and what it would be like to survive something like this. It kind of does what they do with the character, kind of like what Rob Zombie did with H2, except we're seeing it a lot farther down the line with Jamie Lee's performance. And as far as 40 years have passed since this tragedy happened, and I love everything they did with her character. And at first, for some reason, I think this was just me, I thought that like this was going to be the only film that we got in this new timeline. So I was a little let down that there wasn't like a final, there wasn't enough finality to it. But then knowing that they're doing the trilogy now, I feel better about it. So,
well, I mean, right. But when H2O came out and she, actually cuts his head off, right? we thought that was it.
Fair point. I mean, that's probably a little, that's even harder to come back from. So yeah,
you think?
No paramedic required this time around, but
I think the biggest thing for me was Carpenter coming back. And I mean, really coming back. There's been a few remakes of his stuff, and where he has, producer credit.
He's making a boat payment basically to put his name on it. Yeah.
And he's made no bones about that whatsoever. Every one of his that he says, well, they give me the money, I'll let them do the movie. He's made no bones about it. But this one was different, right? This one, it has a Carpenter imprint on it, in addition to, of course, him doing the music with his son, and is it stepson or
godson? Actually,
godson. Thank you. Sorry, and his godson. You could tell that he was really involved in this one in helping shape it, and I think having what you think are non-horror people involved gave it a fresh spin as well. in addition to, of course, the performances, which I thought were great. And it felt like a real Halloween movie again, and a really good one at that.
Yeah, I think where this movie truly won me over was the sequence where they flip the script a little bit, and instead of following his victims and having him pop out of nowhere, they follow him and just kind of keep tracking with him to show how it's, if not completely plausible, at least feasible, how he gets around this whole neighborhood and just pops up out of nowhere, kills someone brutally and then moves on to the next person. It's kind of one of those things where it's like it's almost counterintuitive, because they usually say if the magician shows his trick, then it kind of loses all the magic. But in this, it made it even better somehow. And it was a way to add a new angle, literally, to a movie like Halloween, where you've seen the point of view from the victim, dozens of times at this point. So it was really cool to get that sequence where they took it from a different direction.
And I think maybe the thing I love the most about it is that it deals with Laurie's trauma in as realistic of a way as one can expect from a movie that still, has to have a certain amount of genre, grit behind it. It's really touching the way that she deals with the 40 years between what happened and what she's sure is about to happen. But that's been every day of her life in those 40 years since, and it shows in her performance the pain of having to deal with that and wanting to confront her past and finally put it to rest. I think it touches a lot deeper down than the same stuff they tried to do in H2O. It's just a terrific movie.
And I like that even though she's older, Laurie, that she's still badass, like she's just as capable, of protecting herself and other people in Halloween 2018 as she was in the first film. And I love that, because I feel like sometimes they do that to, like older characters. Like they're like feeble, and I like that she was still capable. She's she's so badass, and she had these like traps like in that house, and like all these like weapons, the like gun shelf she had. I was like, oh yes, all of this, yes. And the trap door in the kitchen. I mean, in the kitchen. I just thought that was so cool.
And then the payoff with Judy Greer's character is pretty phenomenal too.
Yes.
Yeah.
3 generations of Strode women kicking ass. Like Laurie Strode.
Names.
Oh, absolutely. Like she is the boogeyman in that movie, or I guess the boogie woman. Like she is so cool. Like she is like an indestructible force to be reckoned with. And it's great to see. Like you said, Brian, it's kind of like an inversion of what we expect of Michael Myers. And I think that is going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the next 2 movies, which will kind of wrap up this timeline probably of Blumhouse and Halloween. So I'm curious, like, will Michael find it more personal this time, or will she be on the hunt for him? It's going to be really interesting to see. And I love
how will they reincorporate the Cult of Thorn?
Exactly. Yeah, that's really what I'm getting to. I mean, the Man in Black is coming back. That's all we. It's only a matter of time. But and looking at, there's definitely some movies that we did not mention. 2018, like 2017, was a bountiful year on the big and small screens for horror. We also that came out that year. The Nun. Another Conjuring universe film. Overlord, which was a total blast, I think. Yeah. Another one that a lot of people slept on, but I think it's definitely worth checking out.
That just popped up on Hulu, so I do want to give that one a look.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
Not yet, no.
Oh, it is. It's a hoot. It's like a geez. Well, someone said it. I think it was Heather who said it was like there's a video game counts.
Oh, Wolfenstein.
Wolfenstein. Yep. She says it's like Wolfenstein, but with like more body horror.
Nice.
Yeah, it's got some Carpenter thing.
It's got some nods. There's a couple thing nods in there.
And Kurt Russell's son,
Wyatt Russell is in the Kurt Russell role, and he kills it.
I was kind of almost tempted to pick that as a pick, but
yeah, me too.
We had Apostle that came out that year.
Yeah,
The Strangers Pray at Night.
Yeah, loved it.
The First Purge, but don't get confused because it is really like the fourth Purge. So, I make that mistake a lot. We had Mandy.
Yeah.
Oh, love that movie.
Slender Man, which came out in theaters. Nope, like you didn't like it, or nope, didn't see it.
Moving on.
Unsane, which I thought was a really interesting shot in an iPhone. Really good performance by Claire Foy. Winchester came out that year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it did.
These are facts. Insidious: The Last Key.
Haven't seen it yet.
With the key fingers, definitely some creepy moments in that. The Predator came out.
No.
Oh, a little more strong feeling on that one. Oh my. We had Unfriended Dark Web.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Which I think, that one was less supernatural, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay,
but it cranks up the cyber paranoia to absurd levels. It's pretty cool.
Oh, nice. We had Summer of '84.
I wasn't crazy about Summer of '84. I know a lot of people were. I don't know. It didn't quite work for me.
We also had Bird Box, which, remember the Bird Box challenge and how people were getting in accidents?
All the way back in the near future of 2018 when they did the Bird Box challenge.
Yes. And yet to come. I think they're actually working on a sequel to that, or I know Josh Mallerman, who wrote the book, I think is working on a sequel. So
Bird Boxes.
Bird Boxes. Yeah, just make the plural version. We had Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich. The Possession of Hannah Grace, which kind of had an Autopsy of Jane Doe vibe. We had The Perfection, although that didn't come out until 2019.
Yeah, that didn't really release until this year.
Festival circuit then that came out. We had Day of the Dead Bloodline.
We sure did.
And you'll like this one, Brian. We had Hellraiser Judgment that came out.
I'm sure that was a movie.
You haven't seen it?
No.
Wow. You call yourself a horror fan.
Look, I am not the masochist that the people from the Hellraiser movies are, so I'm not going to sit through Hellraiser Judgment. I'm just gonna
it's like Hellraiser meets Saw meets Seven, which sounds great on paper, right?
No, it doesn't.
It does.
I'm just going to go ahead and watch Hellraiser again. It's fine.
It's kind of like that, but not as good as any of those elements.
Well, that's another poster blurb, and
but the guy who plays Pinhead is quite good in the role. That can be said, and he seemed like a really sweet guy when we were listening to him at Flashback.
That's right, yeah. Remember this? The Cloverfield Paradox was a surprise release on Netflix on the Super Bowl Sunday. And they revealed it during the Super Bowl. They said, you can watch this movie in a few hours. That was pretty surprising.
That was. Now, you and I, we didn't hate that, did we?
No. Actually, I know, because I saw the reactions first. And I was expecting it to be, really, really bad. But I liked more than I expected to.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
But still, a little all over the place. But
yeah.
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 We had Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween.
Still haven't seen it.
Yeah, I feel horrible saying this because I'm a huge Goosebumps fan.
Tamika gave a grunt there.
Not a gummy bears? Not a fan of the demonic gummy bears, Tamika?
No, it reminded me of those gingerbread people from Krampus, actually.
Oh, I love them. The gingerbread ninjas are awesome.
Yeah. No, I'm not a fan of the sequel. Wait, whoa, what? I feel like I missed something awesome.
No, you.
No.
Go. Give her.
Oh, I heard, oh, wow. So I was like, ooh, okay, what happened? No, sadly, I did enjoy Goosebumps 2 the way that I enjoyed the first movie. That first movie is just everything my 13-year-old self wanted and more.
Yeah, the first one really surprised me because it felt like Jumanji, but with Goosebumps books, which is kind of a great concept. It just really captured the spirit of Goosebumps. Like, I was kind of like, are they going to do all these stories in one movie? And then it was like, oh, okay, that's how. Well, that makes sense.
Was the house with the clock in its walls from 2018?
Oh my gosh, it was, Scott. Thank you for mentioning that. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, just talking about the Goosebumps made me think of that one, and I went and saw that in the theater, and I had a blast with that.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I mean, it has that same Goosebumps spirit to it.
And it's from Eli Roth.
Yeah, it's
how you go from the Green Inferno to a kids movie is a bit of whiplash, cinema whiplash, but he pulls it off.
Yeah, I still wish that they would have put those blurbs in the trailer, like from the guy who brought you Hostel and the Green Inferno comes. Fun for the whole family. So we had all sorts of fun movies that year, including Bloodfest, which we already mentioned earlier. But so there was a lot in 2018, and some horror video games as well. Call of Cthulhu, Agony, which is kind of like a Diablo in Hell game. We Happy Few. And was there any games in 2018, Brian? I know you've been playing one recently that's been kind of scaring you. But I don't know if that was from 2018.
I don't know when it came out. It's called Outlast 2.
Oh, you know what? I think that's a 2017 game, actually.
Okay. Well, suffice to say that I've been playing it with a full body clench the entire time. It's a survival horror game where you're making your way through this like backwoods cult community, and there's just lots of body parts and desecrated bodies all over the place, and you're trying to not become one of them. And so it's kind of one of those things where you don't fight. It's kind of got a bit of like a gameplay similar to Alien Isolation, where like don't bother trying to find a gun or anything like that. You need to hide, run, or get impaled a bunch, which I have. So yeah, it's an interesting game, and it's definitely one that will keep you up if you play it with the lights off.
It sounds very similar to when I play tennis on the Wii U.
Oh, it's exactly the same thing.
The way I have to raise the racket, the paddle to simulate the racket is breathtaking.
I think they use the same basic template and
I
just
think so.
tweak some of the fine finishing.
Yeah.
Good training for all involved, it sounds like. But and before we wrap things up, I do have to mention we had some great horror television in 2018, including The Haunting of Hill House from Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
And I was late to I didn't watch that until this year, and boy, what an experience that is. Just really intense. But we're excited to see that will be continuing with The Haunting of Bly Manor in 2020. So be curious to see if that'll kind of become the next American Horror Story, perhaps. Time will tell.
Yeah.
We also had Ash vs. Evil Dead, which wrapped up in 2018 after a few years on the Starz network.
Loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people would have wished that could have continued, but I think we're really lucky that we got what we got with the series as a whole. So I would have to subscribe to Stars up here, but it was showing on a different channel up here, so I didn't have to, but I missed the first run of it. And I think because Stars is really more of a niche, I mean, there's so many streaming services now, right? You can't afford them all. And I think maybe it got a little lost in that factor, because if it was on Netflix, and which it is now, but if it had been a first run on Netflix, I think it would have gone through the roof. Yeah. Yeah, it does make you wonder what if, because I feel like, based on just the platform of Netflix, it probably would have gotten a lot more exposure. Because, I didn't have a Stars subscription, so it kind of was like, okay, how do I watch this,
Or an Amazon Prime original,
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, something that just numbers-wise more people would have, which would have been, maybe it would be on like season 5 or 6 now. Who knows?
Could be.
But yeah, we also had Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which premiered, and I'm a huge fan of that show. It kind of feels like Harry Potter meets the Necronomicon. It's just a lot of fun, a very devious kind of show. And Z Nation came to an end after a number of years. We saw The Purge begin, the Purge TV series. So Purge Night came to the small screen. A lot of interesting stuff happening on TV in 2018.
Seems like it was just a year ago.
Right. Oh, and we can't forget Hulu's Into the Dark series also kicked off last year and is in its second season now. But kind of interesting that you basically get a new Blumhouse movie every month with Into the Dark, which is kind of fun. So lots of good stuff all around. And we could talk about it for hours to come, but I think we have already, and we've got to save some gas in the tank for the next decade. So with that, another episode of Corpse Club comes to an end. We want to thank Bryan, our awesome engineer, for helping us out every episode. And as always, we want to thank you, our dear listeners, including those of you who have signed up for a Corpse Club membership. Make sure to visit corpseclub.com to check out our latest episode. You can also sign up to become a member, which will give you access to all sorts of goodies, from bonus content episodes to bonus audio commentaries, many of which feature Bryan and Scott and our must-listen experiences. There's all sorts of fun stuff on there. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review truly does help. You can also find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all of your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach us anytime at contact@corpseclub.com or on Twitter @DailyDeadNews or @CorpseClub, and on Instagram and Facebook under Corpse Club. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay scary.